I'd like to say welcome to everyone to the Pega course, Technical Development Solutions. My name is Daryl Dunnington. I'll talk a little bit more about me later on. But let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule. I want to get started with the schedule so that everyone has an idea of what we'll be doing today. We'll come back, we'll end the day with some more lectures and ready you for the project tomorrow morning. So we will do projects in the morning and then we'll do lectures after lunch going forward. So on days 2 through 7. A little bit about the course composition, just so that you understand, you'll learn 3 core competencies over the next 7 days. The first one is from a BA or business architect perspective. We'll talk about business design. We will cover all 95 certification topics for Pega Infinity. 13 critical skills, 15 essential rules for you to understand project-based implementation. Remember, this is all about not only learning the technology, but having the hands-on skills when you walk away that you can be an active participant in a project. The second core competency, we'll look at technical development from a system architect perspective. You'll learn an additional 10 rules, understand what it means to implement and carry out the design for your project-based implementation. And as I mentioned earlier, in the mornings, we do this after the lectures or before the lectures. You'll have a project-based skill development sessions each day where Ufuk will lead you, and there are no small exercises. This is what I'll tell you. There are no small exercises. You'll be doing a real project. And so we'll roll up our sleeves and break you into 3 teams and have you work on this project so that you truly understand how to implement Pega. And then on day 8, everyone will be required to take the mission test. It's a 40-question test that's online, passing score of 80, and that will complete your training as we go through those 8 days. So that's course composition. Day 2 through 7, as I mentioned, tomorrow morning we'll start at 9 a.m. We'll do a quick review, make sure that we're all on the same page. We'll spend all that morning working on the project. We'll take lunch, come back, and then you get the knowledge and the lecture for certification mastery. And we'll do that for the next 6 days. And then on the last day, we'll do a review. We'll do a prep for the mission test. We'll take lunch, come back, and then everyone will take the mission test, and we'll wrap up. All of the lecture material is in your student guide. So the student guide is the Business and Technical Solution Skill Guide. You should have access to that. You'll see that there are 2 major sections. So the first 3 to 4 days, we'll talk about business design solutions. We will cover the importance of doing a project interview in that process and how all that works. So just so that you'll know, today's lecture will cover that. We'll cover that entire section about project interview. Now, we may get into case type and development, we may not, but we will complete this section because when you start a project in Pega, there are certain methodologies that we want to implement, things like PED, DCO. Those are acronyms you're not familiar with yet, but you will become familiar with those so that we have a methodology, we have an approach of how we're going to use this low-code environment to build our solution. So that's the major discussion that we'll have today. And you'll find that my discussions will precede the work that you'll do in the mornings. So I prepare you with the tools and the understanding of how to use the tools. Then you go into a project sitting and Ufuk will masterfully guide you through using those tools, putting them together to build a solution. So you got the business design solution. We'll cover all of these topics. And then the last 3 to 4 days we'll cover from the technical perspective, from the technical aspect. We'll cover all of those topics. Now, I also want you to realize that as I am going through and communicating with you through lecture, that I am basically following certain topics that's in the certification. So today, when we talk about um, the interview process, I'm really discussing all of these topics in Pega. So we're doing two things for you or with you. We're preparing you for the certification and we're giving you the skill. Also, we have two studios in Pega. I can tell you now the app studio is for the business architect. If you're a business architect in Pega, then you will spend probably 80% of your time in app studio. Let's go to dev studio. So dev studio is for the system architect. Give you a little different view, gives you access to the lower level rules. You don't know what a rule is yet, but think of a rule as a class. If you know about some of the other object oriented types of languages, it's similar to a class if you talk about a rule. That's all you need to know right now. Project interview concepts. You start any project, you have to make sure that you know why you are here and what you are doing while you're here. So that's what we're going to look at, because Tuesday morning, Ufuk will work with you and we'll go through interview concepts to where we create a user story. Does anyone know what a user story is? Anyone know what a user story is? You know what? Let me put your names here so I can see you, so I can call on you. Where's the little option where I can put your name? You know, because once your face shows up, then I don't. Oh no, here. All right, let me ask Muhammad. Muhammad, can you tell me what a user story is? Do you have a concept of a user story?
Yeah, it's been a kind of a while, but if I remember correctly, a user story is kind of like it's kind of like an example or like a case of like if you're designing an application, like a user story would be uh like a certain feature or I guess
Okay,
like a story of how like the user would interact with the system. So like maybe like signing in and depositing money or something for like a bank account, like that would like how that works would be like the story in that situation.
okay. Yeah. So it's actually a story. So let me go to Pranav. You worked with Pega for a while, and you're project manager. So what do you guys do when you're trying to start your project? What part of the interview process can you share with the team that's important?
Let me correct you on that, Daryl. I was a Pega developer, not into the management side of things. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So a user story could be like a business requirement that has to be fulfilled by the development team.
Okay, so it's a business requirement. It's a well-formed business requirement. So that's what we talk about, the who, what, and where, right? Well-formed. So we're going to talk about a lot of the methodologies, but at the end of the day, it's all about building a user story. That's the beginning, that's the inception, that's the ideation process. We're thinking about what we're going to do. We're going to roll those into words, into a user story. That's what you'll do Tuesday morning. We'll build. You guys are grouped in teams of 5. We'll get together with those teams. We'll read over that use case. That'll be your homework for tonight, to read over the use case so you're familiar with it, so that when you come in Tuesday morning, then you'll be able to talk about user stories and what those look like, and Ufuk will guide you through that process. So that's what we're going to focus on. And let's see, someone is chatting, so I have to watch as people are chatting. Thursday. Yes, so that would be Thursday when we will start the project. Today is Wednesday. So I have to keep reminding myself because I keep thinking today is Monday. Okay, so what are we going to look at? We're going to look at Pega Express delivery. Phases in Pega Express are very important. We have 4 phases that we'll look at. We'll look at the discovery phase, we'll look at the prepare phase, the build phase, The last phase where it engenders the go live, where we're looking at that. All the activities that are associated with it. Very important that when we talk about PED, it's often called PED, then that's an approach that we're looking at. I'll spend the first 3 or 4 slides making sure you're familiar with that. Then we'll talk about the concept of DCO, direct capture of objectives. What does that mean? Simply put, how do I take those user stories? How do I take those words, go through a meeting with my team, translate those into Pega artifacts? So those Pega artifacts that I'm talking about is in DCO. In DCO, did I make it a application? Did I translate that user story into an application? Did I make it into a case type? Did I make it into a stage? Did I make it into a process? Did I make it into a step? So in Pega, those are the core components that we use when we're building a solution, an application, a case type, a stage, a process, a step. Those are our core components that we talk about as we go through the process. And then we'll look at what is a well-formed user story? What are the supporting artifacts for user stories? How do I go through Pega and I'll look at the, how do I create a user story and where is that kept and where is that housed and how do I do that? How do I estimate? I have some estimation tools that I can use. And then how do I really understand the technical architecture? I won't dive too deep, but I'll dive deep enough to where it pique your curiosity and you start asking questions. Okay. No, why this thing keeps. All right, so for the introduction, we're going to talk about the interview process, what's core in Pega, PED, the approach that we're going to take. DCO, what does it mean when we use DCO when we're designing and when we are developing? Our purpose is to make sure that we identify business outcomes. So let me go to Rehan. What is a business outcome? Do you have any idea what a business outcome is? Rehan. Hopefully I'm saying your name correctly.
Yeah, so it's, I guess, is it like it's the end product of like a business use case in a sense, or?
Okay. Yeah. That's a general definition. And in Pega, that could be a case type. That could be the case type that has a case life cycle. That could be a minimal lovable product that we have. So, but we're trying to identify business outcome. Oftentimes, that business outcome is typically MLP or a case type, and we look at how do we then form that. So we capture the project requirements, and then we define the application features as we're going forward. So that's what we look at when we go through this particular chapter. So Pega Express, it is an approach. It's not a methodology. And sometimes I'll emphasize certain things because on the exam, though you guys are only taking the mission test, but even on that, they will ask you certain questions a certain way. So it's not considered a methodology, it's considered an approach. So PED is a delivery approach, and it's recommended not for some of Pega implementations, but for all of them. If you ever work for someone and they're not using PED and they're using something else, then to be honest with you, they're not optimizing, or they will not be able to optimize the tool set that Pega has in place because it works in concert with PED. Its features is all about what's called this center out approach. So there are some videos in Pega that I'll point you to. I need you guys to listen to this guy. He's the chief architect in Pega. He talks about the center out approach. I'll only spend one slide on it, but there's a lot of detail about that. But at the end of the day, some of the best practices that come out of Pega Express when you're working with the center out approach and the PED approach is that You want to maximize the benefit of, we call this OOTB, out of the box, out of the box. So Daniel, have you ever heard that term before and you have any idea what that's talking about? OOTB, out of the box. Anyone? Daniel?
I've never heard of the feature out of the box, but I would assume it would be of thinking outside of the restrictions of the projects and trying to get ideas from there just to find a solution.
Okay. So you know what? It's actually the opposite. It's actually knowing what's in the Pega tool set and choosing that first. Because typically we say out of the box, that's design thinking out of the box. Now, we do want you to do design thinking. We do want you to do design thinking, but we also want you to leverage what Pega already has. So quickly, what I want to show you is I'm going to go to Dev Studio. Let me ask you this question. Who knows the difference now between Dev Studio and App Studio? Who uses Dev Studio? Who uses App Studio? The BA or the system architect? Who uses Dev Studio? Anyone want to answer or send me a chat? Who uses Dev Studio? Business architect or system architect? Because that's very important.
The system architect, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, the system architect, that's the more technical person. Think of the system architect as a developer. Think of the business architect as a business analyst. Okay. So within Pega, we have both of those studios. So they work in concert. Why? Because you hear the message. We want the business people to have a common language when they're talking to the technical people. So we put you into the same environment. We talk about same assets. We talk about case type and stages and steps and processes and rules. And now we have a common language that everyone can talk about. All right, so here I wanted to show you, since I was talking about out of the box features in Pega. If I go to Dev Studio and I go to records, this will show me all of the pre-configured artifacts or rule types that I have. So this is technical, but I want you to understand, good knowledge to know. We have 16 categories. Of the 16 categories, we have 209 rule types that have pre-configured rule instances. And what we're saying is best practice is to identify and find one of those existing rule instances or rule types and configure it and customize it instead of creating your own. So for instance, if I go to data model, you'll see that I actually have something called a data transform as a rule type. And then a rule, and it gives me a list of all of the rule instances that are already pre-configured. So maybe I want to use one of them before I go and create my own. See if I can find a different one. That one no longer exists. Let me go to edit validate, because what I want to do is show you a rules form. And so what you see at the end of the day, and this is one of few or one of the only rules that actually use Java, but notice this is a rules form. A rules form will give you the capability with tabs to configure the rule type. And so at the end of the day, you are creating a rule instance. And so what we're saying here is the best practice is to make sure that you use the OOTB, the out-of-the-box features first. If it's already written in Pega, use it instead of creating something yourself. Or if you can't use it as it is, make a copy of it, customize it, and then implement it into your solution. Number two, you hear this all the time. Let it be human-centered in its design, right? What is it that the user really wants? You don't want to think of it from a technical perspective, but the collaboration between the business and IT gives you the capability to say, I can do that. And how do I do that in Pega? I'll say it over and over again, between the two studios, right? So anything that I do in App Studio, I can see the details, the technical details in Dev Studio. So for instance, if I create this process, you don't know that yet, but this is a process. If I create the create request process in App Studio, I should be able to go to Dev Studio if I know where to go into the app and go to a flow. And there should be a process that allows me to create the process here that shows up, because there's actually a rule that gets created for me. And so that's how, when we talk in our conversation about the collaboration between a business BA and a technical IT person, that they're in the same environment. One has one perspective that where they're doing design, if I'm a BA, but that technical essay can then go into Dev Studio and find the actual rule that was designed by the BA. That's the collaboration. That's the power of the Pega systems. You don't find that in any other systems. Many times you have your business architects going off and creating things, and then you got your system architect reading it, or the system developer reading it and trying to translate it. Now we're saying that business architect can actually build that design. Technical person doesn't have to translate it. They simply have to implement and configure the actual rules at the end of the day. And then, of course, we want it to be flexible and we want it to be scalable. So some of the benefits of Pega Express is that it really unlocks the power of Pega. It unlocks the tool set. We're trying to minimize what individual effort you have to put forward. Now, you still have to think at a very advanced level, but you don't have to write the detailed lines of code to get something done. It's all about being outcome driven. Outcome driven. How do I drive this project in a optimized fashion so that I can understand and cut through the complexity, get it into much smaller parts that we'll talk about, a minimal lovable product, right? And to help my team manage the risk and deliver consistency going forward. So you'll see that we'll talk about these 20 unique best practices. You don't have to memorize these. Just come back and take a look at those. But we will take a look at these 6 to make sure you understand the idea behind Pega Express. All right, so the center out approach. I'll be brief about the center out approach because I'm going to send you guys a video. I think the guy, and that's the chief Pega architect, he does an excellent job on that video, gives you in-depth knowledge. But at the end of the day, it's all about a business architect, sure, that is customer centric, that's driving business outcomes. That's all I'll say about it. It's customer centric, business architecture that drives business outcomes. And if you want to look at it from a technical perspective, you'll see there are front end channels, there are back end systems and connectors. There is a situational layer cake. In Pega, we talk about a situational layer cake. That's not anything to eat, but it is something that we have to implement. So let me ask Samaya. Do you know what a situational layer cake is? Your audio is not on.
You said it's not something to eat. There's a rear end and front end.
Yeah, so it's really not something to eat. William, you know what a situational layer cake is?
I do not. If
Yeah.
I were to hazard a guess, maybe it's sort of almost like a flow chart sort of thing that depending on what your needs are, you go to a different layer of the cake, maybe. I'm not too sure.
Yeah. Good. So, you know what I am going to do is I'm going to show you right quickly. that if I go to what I call an application, let me just do it this way. I go to an application, the foundation of the situational layer cake. Let's just talk about that, because in Pega, they talk about the situational layer cake. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. But here, if you're looking, there's an operator ID. Operator has some called an access group. So that's like any other system you get into. But here you have an application. So where does the situational layer cake come in? It's when applications are built on top of applications. So notice this. This is saying that this application, GoGo Road, what two applications is it built on? CE Base, and it's built on what? Theme Cosmos. So there are rules that are defined in Theme Base. There are rules that are defined in CE Base that at certain situations, when I go through what's called rules resolution, it's looking for these rules and it's going to search in this application and in this application. And based upon the situation in this layered cake-like structure, it's going to pick out a rule for me. And it has to do it all in less than 1 millisecond or 1 second, 1,000 milliseconds, right? So your systems, your back-end systems that's running Pega, they really have to be big. They really have to be scaled and powerful. But not only does it use these applications, it has its own sets of layers that we call rule sets. And rule sets are containers of rules. Rule sets are containers of rules so that they're at a certain layer in Pega, and we organize it in a 4-layered type of organization that we'll talk about later on. But understand, situational layer cake says what? A Pega solution, an application, has built on top of other applications that are called layers, and the one I'm creating has its own set of layers, and based upon this rules resolution process, it will determine in which situation to pull which rule out. Wow, that's a situational layer cake. So you add a little flour, you add a little sugar, you add a little thing and some other things with it. And then you put it in the oven for 350. All right, so center out approach, again, I'll send you a video about it because I really want you to listen to it and look at it. He does an excellent job talking about it. But at the end of the day, business architecture, customer-centric, delivering business outcomes. So what are the values of Pega Express? I tell you this because it's part of the certification, but it's also good to know. There are 6 core values, 6 core values. Solve the business problem. Well, some of these are very obvious, right? We want to use the center out approach to make sure that we're using our architecture and our tool set appropriately in Pega. Number 2, design for great experience. How often have you said UIs need to be human-centric, right? Make sure that that's a great experience when the user's going through, that it's actually working for you. Collaborate effectively. So between business and IT, what are the 2 studios that we have? Someone tell me, what are the 2 studios so that we can have the collaboration between business and IT? 2 studios are what?
App and dev. Or
That's right, the app and the dev studios. App and the dev studios, those are core, right? So that we can communicate with each other. We want to leverage our speed by using OOTB. So now, what is OOTB?
Out of the box features.
Out of the box. Does anyone remember how many rules I said we had? 16 categories. Did I mention how many rules?
I think it was 20.
209?
209 rules. Yeah, 209 rules that are there. So some people are taking notes. Very good. And then we want to establish a foundation of continuous and scalable agile delivery. What is agile? Do you guys know? Someone tell me, what is agile? You probably read it. Have you experienced it? Give me a definition of agile versus waterfall.
Uh, So I guess agile would be like continuing to work and test on, I guess, your project as time goes on,
Okay.
as compared to waterfall where you do it kind of step by step. But with agile, you're
Okay.
continuously improving, continuously testing,
Right.
and continuously
So what
working
is a
towards the final
yeah,
product.
yeah, that's it. So what is a have you heard the term sprint? What is a sprint? What is an
Yes,
iteration?
yes. So a sprint would be like, I guess, like a 2 or 3 week time period
There we
where
go.
like the team works towards I guess completing one feature or something, and then at the end of the sprint they would review it and then move on to the next sprint,
That's it. That's
and
it.
so
So
on.
that is agile in a nutshell. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you very much. So now you guys will be doing agile sprints every day. So this will be really, really fast instead of a week. So the first day you're going to do use cases. The next day you're going to do case life cycle. The third day you're going to be doing data modeling. The fourth day you're going to be doing data. So this is going to come very fast, very quick, very, very rapid. And guess what? There is no ultimate solution. It's based upon your team. Ufuk will guide you through that and say, well, no, that's probably not the best way. Have you thought about it this way? So there'll be a lot of trial and error that you guys will have to go through. But at the end of the day, you'll figure out which is the appropriate tool set to use. Okay. And then, of course, we want to accelerate time to value. The 4 phases of Pega Express, very important to note, very important to know. Discovery, prepare, build, and adopt. Discovery, prepare, build, and adopt. When you're working on a project, Pega Express, it's used throughout the whole project from ideation until go live, and you're in one of these 4 phases. Now, they are boxed by discovery and adopt. Discovery says what? Why are we here? What are we here for? What are we to do? What is our micro journey, right? What is our business outcome? What are our personas? Who are the groups of people that we are going to engage in our application? What channels do we need when we are looking at implementing this? Is it a mobile? Is it a desktop? Any other channels that we may have? What outside integration do we need to know? So part of the discovery is saying, why are we here? What are we here for? Give me some high level knowledge about why we think this is a good idea and who we're going to date, who we are going to engage. And then at the end of the day, we have the adopt that says, hey, we did everything in these 2 that we need to do. So let's go ahead and look at what we thought that we were going to build to see if we really built it, if we want to adopt it, and we want it to go live. Someone tell me, what's the definition of go live? Anusa, are you here? Anusa, what's the definition of go live? I don't know if he's here. So someone was getting ready to answer. Who none?
Yeah, so sorry, the question was,
What is the definition of go live? Go live.
I believe when your minimum viable product, lovable product is ready, and when you put it into production.
That's it. Yeah, yeah. And so if it's not, and we're going through an MLP, and if it's not ready, then guess what? We go back and build, or we look at the prepare again. The prepare says what? Initially, prepare says it's our first kickoff. Now we have a project manager, and we are truly understanding what our MLP is. Which one are we going to build in discovery? We may have talked about, we think it may be a 6-month project, right? We'll do phase 1, phase 2. Now we're going to change our terminology and say MLP 1, MLP 2. We'll go through a design session through DCO. We'll then get the IT team together with the business team. We start discussion about what is the first sprint and how do we do this and how do we do that and what personnel do we need to make that happen. So if you look in your a student folder, you'll see that there's actually a case type backlog that's actually there. Case type backlog helps you when you're looking at discovery and prepare and build. This is a very, very valuable tool that we have in Pega. Now we have many other tools. We'll talk about the estimator tool and some other things, but this is big and comprehensive. Notice that in this case type backlog tool, you got a project summary, you got some assumptions. What are the assumptions that we're looking at for this particular project? Micro journey. So what is that we're trying to do? You know, how can we take this complexity and break it into smaller parts and call it a micro journey? Micro, right? A smaller part of a larger journey to make that happen. What case types are in that micro journey, that MLP? This is like alphabet soup, right? MLP, case types, PED. But here you got several case types. So a case type, let's just talk about a case type. If I'm going to build an application in Pega, just so you can get some perspective. I'm going to build an application, Go Road. It's going to have one or more case types. These are major business functionality to support the overall business outcome. Major business functionality to support the overall business outcome of we want an application, Go Road, whatever the Go Road is. Well, major functionality says I need assist requests, I need service, I need new vendor. I created this one myself. And so that's what we do in Pega. We look at this and we say, what are the case types? So for instance, when you look at building your application, it has something to do with a university. And so you have this university solution you're trying to build, but you have enrollment. That's a major component, right? You have grades. That's a major component. You have when you enroll and you pay for it, that's a major component. So you got to figure out what is a case type that's going to fit into that application so that it's clear what the user will have to do. So we have case types in Pega. Any supporting features, any interfaces with external systems, any personas, who are the people that are actually going to use it? What type of reports do we have to have? The working backlog, what other work do we have to do? So in case you didn't know, Pega is not for small projects. It's for big projects. When I worked for Pega for 12 years. And they did not consider a customer unless they had $500 million in assets. So I've had the opportunity to work with Public Safety Canada. I work with the CIA in the United States. I work with the FBI in the United States. I work with Homeland Security. I've worked with all the banks in Canada. I've worked with TD Bank. I've worked with Royal Canadian Bank. I've worked with all the banks in the United States. I've worked with Morgan Stanley, and I've worked with Apple. I've worked with Google. I work with Amazon. Notice the names. These are huge companies. Pega is not cheap, right? And I should say neither is the salary. So once you get into Pega, you get the 3 to 5 years, then you see that your salary grows. And I was fortunate because I was able to set up relationships in universities around the world, in Europe, and Brazil, and Mexico, and the United States, and Canada. I work with Ryerson, and they all look for talent. So just know that If you got a Pega skill and you're good at it, it can take you anywhere around the world. You could go anywhere around the world, find major companies, and be able to work for them. Okay, so let me get back on track. That when we talk about the prepare, we're talking about kicking off the project, capturing the MLP, knowing how many sprints we need to do, looking at DCO to help us identify those outcomes, and we have that case. What is it called? My case type backlog page to kind of help us see that on a spreadsheet format. And then we do what? We go in and build it. And how do we build it? We build it by reading my user stories, going into my 2 studios, having the collaboration, BA doing their part, SA doing their part, having a product owner and business architect run continuous DCO sessions within those sprints to make sure that we're getting continuous feedback, and then building additional user stories to see if we're ready to then implement. So if you've ever done any type of building of enterprise solution, same process, it's just here's the Pega's version of how to make this happen. Okay, so remember those 4: discovery, prepare, build, and adopt. Okay, that's the overarching from ideation to go live that we use in Pega. DCO. So I like to be short about DCO by saying or defining it this way. It's taking words, converting them into Pega artifacts. That's really what all of this is about. It is very collaborative in nature. It's a way of collecting data, iteration through it, and validating data. At the end of the day, it's saying, here are my words that I have as a user story. I have this session to where I have a conversation about what does this user story mean in the context of the Pega tool set? And I say, how do I translate that into an application, a case type, a stage, a process, a step, an integration point, a data model, a UI, goes on and on and on. An approval, a cascading approval. It's one of those 209 rules that we've already had predefined that we're saying we're going to use those out of the box features to optimize our process. So what does DCO bring to you? Micro journeys, personas, channels, data, integrations. How is that realized? When I go to the App Studio, notice how App Studio is broken into this case life cycle, or case type is considered my micro journey. Notice that I have a way to identify my personas and channels. So I'm saying that when I'm creating a request, it'll be for a CSR on a user portal. It will also be for a user on a user portal. DCO helped me do that. When I create the service portion or stage, when I'm in that stage, then it's for only the CSR. So it's not visible to the user. How did I get that? From my DCO session, through my conversation, from my use cases. I know that I needed this stage, and I needed this process, and I needed these steps based upon my user story. And then I identified that this is for the CSR. What else does it tell me? My data in my interfaces. So I need the customer database. I need the service address database. I need the vehicle information database. I need the payment information database. You see that? DCO helps me define what I can implement in my App Studio that I can further implement my rule solutions and configuration in my Dev Studio. So we go from App Studio to Dev Studio, the collaboration between the business and the system architect. So what does it help us do? Build my application, focus again on business outcome, making humans human-centered. So what do we want to do? We want to optimize our delivery with Pega Express by having someone in our corner that we call a project delivery lead. Project delivery lead is someone in Pega who's really looking at what are the best practices. What are the best practices? And they ask themselves, I'm working on this project and I'm responsible for making sure that I identify best practices that are already done. That I look at best practices that are not aligned with what we need to do and see how do I implement them. That I then prioritize which best practices is in Pega from a PED approach will help us be successful and optimize our outcome. Create the prioritization and then implement and to monitor those. Okay. Now, as a BA, we start out as a BA, you also have best practices. So what I'll say about this is part of the test, part of the certification. You'll need to know the best practices that a business architect should be responsible for, and you find them in this first column, right? Business outcomes. So what is my high value? What is my high value business outcome? What is my business value? So what is my strategy to get to that outcome? What is my micro journey? Okay, what is my minimal lovable product? What is my, in DCO, what do I understand about its process of collaboration through validation? My reuse strategy. This is interesting. So when I talk about my reuse strategy, and I lost my environment here, some concepts about reuse. I'll go to Dev Studio. So raise your hand if you know anything about object-oriented programming. Have you ever heard the term of inheritance? Right, the term of inheritance. I always like to say it's children receiving what parents have, right? So some of you receive from your parents. I have 3 boys and 3 sons and a girl. And so children get what parents have. That's my best definition. So in the Dev Studio, in Dev Studio, let me just show you this. In Dev Studio, it gives you a technical view of the classes that have been implemented for your application. Now, I said I'd come back and I'll say this again and again, but every case type has a class that implements its behavior. Case types are designed on the App Studio case lifecycle as stage, steps, and processes. So if I go to App Studio, you'll see my case types, and you'll see how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. I go to Dev Studio. How many classes do you see? 1, 2, 3, 4. What's designed on App Studio is implemented on Dev Studio, and I see them as classes. So this is the parent. Can you guys see that these are slightly indented? Right? You can see these are slight. So this is Pega's way of indicating these are children they inherit from the parent. So let me ask you an object-oriented inheritance question about reuse. I have a rule that all 4 of these children or siblings need to use. Where would be the best place to put that rule? Can someone give me an answer? Where would be the best place to put that rule? If these 4 siblings need to use that rule, instead of me writing it 4 times, if I use the concept of inheritance, where would I put that rule? Because this is reuse.
In the
Yes,
parent?
Daniel. Yeah. So in the
Oh yeah.
parent. Here, this is the parent. So if I put that rule here, then based upon the rules of inheritance, the laws of inheritance, then we say that that rule is what? Visible or in scope so that it can be used. And as a matter of fact, when you create that rule for its rule type, Pega will give you a drop down on App Studio or Dev Studio for you to select that rule. All right, so hold on just a minute. Sometime I lose my camera. Can you guys still hear me? Yeah, okay. You know what? I'll fix this because it's almost time for lunch. My camera is off because sometimes it just loses its mind. But as long as you guys can see this, this is fine. All right, so that's when we talk about reuse. Reuse is important, very, very important when you understand that. And then know that when you're implementing a Pega project, you're implementing it with Scrum Agile so that we keep the stakeholders engaged all the time. Oh, I think I want to stop here because I want to spend a lot of time talking about a user story when we come back from lunch. We only have 3 minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Let me ask Michael. Michael, are you here? Tell me one thing that you learned that you didn't know before this lecture. One thing that we talked about. Michael?
I learned that Pega has all these capabilities for object-oriented programming, or like using pieces to simulate object-oriented programming. I'm still trying to figure out on my side, like how to do some things, but I think I'm getting a concept of it or understanding of it.
Okay. All right. So let's make sure though, before these 8 days are up, if it's not clear, contact me or Ufuk and we'll work with you and walk you through it and make sure that it's clear for you. Okay.
Yeah, the concepts for me are clear. It's just the what buttons to press to get certain
I
things
know.
working.
Absolutely. And that actually takes some repetition, just doing it over and over, because it's a little different than writing code. Writing code, you can remember it and see it, but here it's all visual. You got to point and click, point and click, point and click, and follow these steps. And that gets really, really confusing sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. All right, great. So let me ask Hamraj. Hamraj, what is one thing that you have gleaned or learned that you didn't know before the lecture?
I learned about the values of using Pega. So like solving the problem that the business would have, collaborating between the business side and the IT side, which is with the App Studio and the Dev Studio, like kind of the components. I also learned like the use of out-of-the-box features and like designing features outside using those features that are already given to you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, very good. And one more person, Hamed, what did you learn? What feedback can you give us?
Regarding to match between the business analyst and the developer, that you said there is no integration, with the application, that they can match each other easily, and whatever the business analytic needs, the developer can understand it easily. Because I think this is link between them easily, and I think that's a great point.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So with that, I believe it's time for lunch. So let's take an hour lunch. It is, oh, I'm sorry, is it?
I think it's 11:30.
11:30?
It's
Oh, and so we're taking lunch at 12:30, right?
yeah.
Okay, so let's pause and take a 15-minute break. Okay, let's pause and take a 15-minute break. Come back at 11:45, and then we'll pick up again. Okay. All right. Thank you. Zoom in, and we're back in business. All right, a backlog. Who can tell me what a backlog is? Anyone? What is a backlog? Dealing with Scrum, dealing with user stories.
Like a
Can you tell me what a backlog is? Did I pronounce it correctly? Hamed? Hamed? Hamed.
I believe that this is the history of the user. That's whether they're dealing with the system. I think I remember this.
Okay. Mohammed, were you gonna give me a definition?
Yeah. So like when you're like in sprints or like when you're like doing scrums, I guess, like a backlog is kind of like at the beginning of the project, you make a list of different user stories you want, and then you put those into the backlog. And then I guess you start with the first one, and then whenever you're done with whatever task is at hand, you go back to this backlog, which has all the user stories that you're working on, and you pick something else to work on. So I guess it's kind of just like the list of the user stories that are up next to be working on.
It is, yeah. So it is a list of the stories to work on, and I would say, I mean, it is also a consolidation of everything that we're trying to do. So you got this backlog, a log of user stories. We need to get them accomplished, and it really does tell a story. So we move from the backlog to active, and then it gets rolled into DCO. DCO translates it into the prepare and build, and then we build it out. So user stories, though, user stories have to be well-formed. So you hear this concept, what is a well-formed user story? Well, they answer the question, who needs it, or what function needs it, what is needed, and why is it needed? And so many times requirements are general in nature, then you want a well-formed user story to make sure that you're clear as to what you really want to do. So it's interesting because I just got through working with a group, Ufuk and I just got through working with a group, and we were looking at some of the user stories that they had to go through. And we would ask people, well, is this a well-formed user story? Let me see if I can find one. Let me back up here. see if I can find a user story in one of the exercises. Oh no, actually, this actually gives you the steps, so they don't really give you the user story. But what we quickly realized was that they gave you just enough information to where it looked like it was well formed. They answered the who, the what, and the why, but they didn't give you the details because they didn't really go through that DCO session to say why it was needed a certain way. And sometimes you get to that point to say, well, requirement versus specification, how much of that should I put in my user story? But you have to make sure that in your user story that there's enough in there that when that developer gets it, he or she, they know exactly what to do. Backlog, we've already talked about it. List of user stories. What is our definition of ready? You'll see that term DOR, definition of ready, means that it is meeting the criteria of what we feel is right for it to be put on the backlog as a candidate so that it can then be used. So make sure you understand that whole concept, definition of ready, D, capital D, lowercase o, capital R, definition of ready. We have certain criteria that we look at. We've already looked at the case type backlog. Remember I said that's a tool. That's a tool that we actually use here that really helps us look at the whole breadth of the system that we're working on and what is it that we are trying to accomplish and get done. Let's actually go here. So I want you to bring up your system and walk through this with me. All right, bring up your system, walk through this with me. I already have it open. So in App Studio, remember this is a very collaborative tool. In App Studio, we have the ability in Pega to capture user stories. Now, a lot of companies may have a third-party solution that they use, and sometimes we have integration points like Jira that will allow you to import. We have Excel and some other things that allow you to import and export in. But just know that within Pega itself, you can actually create user stories and keep up with them. So let's go upper right-hand corner. You see the what's called the Agile Workbench. Agile Workbench in your system. Find that for me and click on it. First time, it may take a little while longer. Remember, I've already gone through first use assembly, so it shows up fairly quickly. And you should see something like that. So give me a thumbs up if you guys can find that, if it's working. I just want to make sure that your system is actually working for you. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So notice that here I have stories, I have bugs, feedback. So you guys know what a bug is, right? It's a little insect, little creature that sometimes will bite you. All right, now you guys have to laugh. You have to laugh at my jokes, even though if they're not funny, just smile at them, you know. So I can never get my wife to laugh at my jokes. But okay, so bugging means something's broken. It's not working as it should be working. There we go. Thank you very much. And so you have to. We have a list that we have a bug that you can then create. We even have feedback as you're working on it. Remember, this is a very collaborative tool. Very collaborative tool. There's feedback. So now the team can go in and get feedback from everyone. Everyone has access to the same system. They're working on the same project. And you got all of that documentation here. Matter of fact, there's even a documentation feature in Pega that will print it out for you. So then it's it is a compliant type of documentation that actually gets printed out. So if you want to create a story, let's look at a story. Click on the plus, and you create a story. Really simple. Okay, so we'll create a story. We want to talk about, let's see, updating the balance transfer. something like that. Then you go and give it a description, and this is where I need to put in the who, what, and the why. All right. Who needs it, what it's for, and why. So you put that in there. You make it well formed. That's the term that we use, well formed. That's a general term in conversation that you have on a Pega project. Make sure it's well formed. And you get people like Ufuk will come back and say, that's not well formed. That's not really clear enough if I'm going to give this off to a developer for him or her to understand what they need to do. So making sure that it's well formed is important. Is it associated with any other features or not? Who is the owner? So you should have all your team members in there in the system so that you can select the owner. And you can have a due date. When is it due by? What is the level of complexity? Low, medium, high. Any attachments. So tool allows you to attach documents. What is my acceptance criteria? What do I put there? Any other additional details? So this is very, very comprehensive. Pulse is one of the communication mechanisms that we have in Pega. It gives me the ability to communicate with everybody on the team. It's kind of like a chat board. Now I can then put a pulse out there to say, I'm going to start a conversation about this user story. So other people can chime in and you can send it to and have selected people have conversations with them to make sure that at the end of the day, it becomes well formed. So we have that in Pega, and then you want to hide it. You go back and you click, it just toggles. Well, or you hit the X button and then X out, brings you back to your standard environment. So that's where we go into Pega and we create our user stories. Thursday morning, I said Tuesday earlier, but Thursday morning, you'll be reading through a script. And from that script, break you into teams of 3 teams of 5, and you'll be building user stories. And from those user stories is the foundation of your project. You'll be able to say, oh, I didn't know enough then. We need to go back and through this iteration, we need to update that user story. We need to add more to that user story. And I will continue to encourage you to do that so that you can truly understand what it's like to work on this. So as we're going through this exercise environment, just know that you'll have a different environment. You'll have a team server environment that we will send out a email to you either late tonight or early in the morning. So expect another email from us that's from Axis/ReadyTech. And you'll see that it'll give you an event ID and be able to get into that environment. And so once Ufa comes on, he's already created an administrative ID for you guys. And he'll talk about someone needs to take the lead as an administrator to set up the operator IDs. And from the operator IDs, then you get into creating a new application. So you're doing this from the very beginning. So this is a great opportunity for you. The majority of the knowledge that you get from Pega Academy, everything's already created for you. You're just trying to dive in to do it. But we're starting at the very beginning. And you're going to walk through every phase, every aspect of Pega over these next 7 to 8 days. Next slide. User stories, feedback, and bugs. So you're able to get into these. You know what this is now. And get access to it. Now, we also have an estimator tool. Estimator tool is good. It allows you to, if you enter in all of the information in the Pega, it will come up with an estimate for you. It'll tell you the number of case types that you have, your personas that you've created, your data objects that you're utilizing, and it will figure out, or it will try to tell you how many people you need and how long it should take you to get this done. So, but remember, it's a tool. It's a tool you look at the estimator tool, it's only as good as the information that you provide for it. So, just a second here. And it's going to capture, of course, your case types and the life cycle and things that I told you about here. So I want to show you where that estimator tool is. That's what I was looking for. I want to show you where the estimator tool is. So here up at the top, you want to click on Overview. Let's take a quick look at all the information that Pega gives you. Now, yours may look different if you didn't get into the same exercise that I got in, but it doesn't matter. It all works the same. I clicked at the overview. It gives me an overview page. It tells me everything that I need to know from a business architect perspective about the application from a very high level. It tells me the name of the application, tells me the URL that I'm working on in development, not in production or not in staging. And then it tells me some information here. Here's my application profile. Go to application profile. You'll see tools. Pega is a very collaborative tool. Inventory, map feature, but come over to estimator. We'll talk about some of those later on. So here's the estimator. And it's talking about what? My release. MLP1. We're at MLP1, MLP2. It's a future MLP. It's an unplanned MLP. I can calculate it based upon what information I provided. What delivery approach are we using? Scrum or waterfall? How many people are on the team? Staffing. Is it co-production? Is it non-production? So does anyone have an idea, and I hadn't told you, what is co-production? Anyone like to guess? On you on? Let me see if I can get the name right. Nugent. Okay, your audio is on, but I can barely hear you. So my question is, do you know what the concept of co-production is? Okay. Actually, it's very, very low, so I don't know if you need to communicate with us, send it through chat. Hamraj, can you tell me, you have any idea what co-production is?
I'm not sure, but if I were to guess, maybe like two separate production teams.
Excellent. Yeah. So that's in essence what it's talking about. Co-production says that we have someone that is in the company that has been certified, and they are one of the qualified skills, and they are working with an associated consultant group. Typically what some of the larger companies will do, they will hire large consultant companies like Accenture and EY or Capgemini or Rules Cube or Rulesware. That's just some of the larger firms. They'll hire them to come in and do a Pega solution. And part of the best practices is this concept of co-production. Well, you don't want them to do all the work. You want people who are qualified in your company that have the proper certifications, the CPBA, the CPSA, the CPSSA, that they are certified so that you can work together with them. It's co-production. It's two teams working together to build a solution. Okay, so that's what that talks about when it talks about the co-production. The environment in Pega can be on-prem. On-prem means on-premises, means that your servers, they're all local there, or we're in the cloud. I can tell you 5% of Pega's customers are in the cloud. AWS cloud, Pega cloud, Azure, whatever cloud, they're in the cloud. That's really where they make their money. It's an easier configuration when it's actually there. But anyway, my whole point is Estimator gives you the capability. Again, it's another collaborative tool we have within Pega that the BA will use, that the product owner will use, and they'll take a look at that to make sure they're estimating from an MLP, a minimal lovable product. What can we roll out in this iteration to go through those 4 phases and to go live with? So that is the estimator tool. Technical architecture. So this will be fun. So now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into really understanding Pega, so that you'll have some knowledge about what Pega is doing. Because really, Pega does an awful lot in just one click. With one click, it may create 10 rules. And it's okay if you're a business architect and you're trying to just simply do a design to show and tell to the user. But it's something else if you are a system architect and now you need to be able to implement those rules. And sometimes rules are created in a certain place, and because of reuse, you need to move them to a different place. And if you don't understand the technical architecture, then you can't make that happen. But in part of the prepare phase and during the refinement of the build phase, you have to have this level of knowledge. You work with someone like a lead system architect. They look at the best practice for out of the box when we're looking at it. They look at who are you working and building this for. In a case of a persona, the data objects, and anything else that you have to look at for this release. So the 3 things that we always look at: the case type, the persona, and the data, or the data in the integrations. We call those the 3 pillars. So just remember that. We do that from a technical perspective, but that's also part of the certification too. But when you're dealing with Pega, those are the 3 major pillars that we look at. The case type, what is it that we're doing? The work, we call it the work we're carrying out. The personas, who we are doing it for, and the data objects, the information that we are wanting to manipulate and manage. And so the LSA, the role of an LSA is that they have to be responsible for the application structure. So let me bring my system back up, and you guys follow me if you are doing, if you can on your system. Bring my system back up. And this is good for pointing and clicking. Remember, I talked about reuse. Remember, I talked about the concept of reuse. So what I did on the break, I went and I looked at my structure, and it looked like this. And remember, I asked you the question about the 4 siblings, and here's the parent, and how do I create reuse if I need a rule, if I need some functionality to be utilized by all of the children. And so I went to data model, and I just created this property. Now, to create a rule in Pega is very simple. If from a technical perspective, you right-click on the rule type. I'm saying that slow so you can follow me. You right-click on the rule type, and you do create. So let's just kind of walk through this. I want you guys to create a rule. So when your significant other asks you what you did today, say, hey, I created a rule in Pega, and this was really great, okay? So you come here and you're creating a property. So this is more like a defined data type. And I don't know, just put name. Now, notice something. It's going to ask you which layer do you want to put it in. That's what this is asking you, context. By default, the context is the class that you're in here. It actually knows that. See this, and I'm saying this, remember that situational layer cake? This is all about reuse, this whole concept of reuse. Do I want to put it on this top layer, or do I want to put it in a lower layer? I can't put it in the Cosmos or Pega layer. They won't let me put anything there. So I only have these two that I want to put in. So by default, I'm going to put it on the Go-Go Road layer, the application I'm working in. 99% of the time, that's where you're going to put it. The others are an exception. So just remember that by default. Which class do I apply it to? Remember, class and case type, they're the exact same thing. Well, in this case, this is a parent class and it doesn't really have a case type, but I still want it to go here. And then which rule set? That's my container where I store all the rules in, and then I have versioning. So you guys know what this is, a 10101? Major, minor, patch. The first number is a major number of the release. The second one is a minor number of new features, updates. And the third one is a patch, things that are being fixed. So that's standard across any software, but just want you to see that. Well, here's name, and I do create open, and it tells me now I can set it to a certain data type. This is an example of what we call a property in Pega. We have many different rule types, but everyone's familiar with a property. So I'll do like decimal, and I'll save it. I can do something else. Action, I want to make this so that it's relevant. Notice I said make mark as a relevant record. That means that I want it to show up in my drop-down list for BAs when they are working on the App Studio on one of these case types. Okay, so what did I just tell you? That as a technical developer, I can create rules anywhere I want to for reuse. A BA doesn't know how to do this, but an SA does. But a BA, I can create rules well above the case types, the classes that represent the case type, so that it can be reused. And I mark it as relevant so that it shows up in the list. So I say that. Now, if I go over to, if you happen to do that, you have to hit this button, do a refresh, so you can see what you've created. Now you see that name there. I actually should have named it something else because there's many of them out there named name. But anyway, you end up seeing that. I'm going to go over to App Studio. I'm going to use the new provider because that's easier for you guys to see. I've already created that. I'm going to go to my case type. Assist request, because remember, that's one of my children. It's one of my children that I have. And I'll pause right there because all you have to do, yours may look differently, but as long as you get to the App Studio and you get to one of your case types, and now you got your case lifecycle, I can come to this collect information step. And I can click on configure. And I can search for that field. So I can come here, and I'm not going to see it right now in that field, but I can search for this field, new. And it shows up for me. So you should be able to do the same similar action. You know, if I type in name, I should have typed something other than name. I may get a lot of those. Yeah, see, I end up getting a lot of these, but this is probably the one that I created. So what is the concept of reuse that I just showed you? But I'm also talking about the layers too, right? I created that rule at a certain layer, and then at a certain class that was above the case type, the children, so that now when I'm building like this UI, I could actually add this field, and that becomes part of my UI. Wow. So there's that collaboration between the business architect and that system architect, that business architect says, look, I need to build a UI, and in order for me to do that, then I need you to go and show me how to expose those or how to make those available. So then the essay would go to the dev environment, figure out where it is. And typically you just don't create it. It's pointing back to some database table, right? Some database table so that they get the actual data. I'm going to cancel that because I don't want to do anything. So from a very technical perspective, now we talk about this whole thing about the situational layer cake. And I showed you the 4 layers that we have. The Pega platform, everything is built on the Pega platform. Everything is built on the Pega platform. Now, I don't remember if I showed that to you, but let's just go ahead and walk through this. Just remember this. This is a general pattern that applications are built on in Pega. So let's go to the Dev Studio. Go with me to Dev Studio. Give you a bit more functionality. Go down to the bottom left-hand corner, and you'll get information about the operator and general features. And you want to go to the operator ID. So this is called the operator rule. Operator ID, this is the operator rule. All rules in Pega, they have tabs of configuration. You have the actual name of that rule, and it's stored in a rule set. It has to be stored somewhere. That's how you know that you're in a rules form. Every rule has a rules form. Access group, then it points to the application rule. So now let's come over to the application rule. Okay. In the application rule, as I mentioned before, this Go-Go Road application is built on 2 applications. CE Base, Theme Cosmos. But I don't see Pega rules yet. I don't see Pega yet. Well, since this is the bottom one, if I go and click here, well, I got maximum tabs open. Hold on. Let me close some tabs. If you get too many tabs open, you have to close. You only get 10 tabs that you can open. Now, if I wanted to get rid of all of them, look over to the right. I can go and I can do a close all, but I don't want to close all of them. That's FYI. Okay, so, all right. So I am, where did I go? What did I do with it? Okay, let's go back and, well, you know what? Let me just close all of them anyway. I accidentally closed it. So let's come here. Operator. Application rule. And Theme Cosmos, I click on it. And there's Pega rules. You guys see that? Give me a thumbs up if you see that. This is basic architecture. If you guys are software engineers, you will really appreciate this. Okay. So these are the layers, right? The Pega platform. We just found the Pega platform. Now, if I wanted to drill down further, look at this. These are all of the application rule sets that build the Pega platform. Does that make sense? Here's an application. What are its unique rule sets that build that application? Rule sets here, application that's being built. Now, let's go one step further. As a operator, when you log on, the only way that you know what you can do is based upon all of your rule sets that are available to you. This is technical. So if I come here and I go to profile, click on your profile. Okay. Now, notice when I expand this, what are all of these rules that you see at the bottom here? The same ones that you see here. So what's the story that I'm telling you? Every operator or user that logs in to Pega has an access group that says what they can do, but also points to an application rule to say what needs to be loaded in order for them to do what they need to do. Make sense? So that operator, access group, application rule, it's going to load all of these rule sets. There's theme Cosmos, and then it's going to load everything else. And now I have everything I need as a user to carry out whatever I need to do. And that's done at login time when you sign in. Here's the go-go road, and then here are all the rule sets that make up the go-go road. Okay. Now, when we get back from lunch, we're going to go through creating a new application from scratch, and you'll see what's being built and how it's being built, and we'll go through that whole process. So the other thing that you can take a look at is if I'm in Dev Studio again, and this is on the App Explorer in Dev Studio. I can start deleting some information, and you start seeing there's a certain naming convention. Now, I'll talk about the naming conventions later on, but just notice how many other classes are out there. Classes that start with int, work, data. So what do you think int is for? If this is data, and we call it data dash, int dash, work dash. If work is for the business logic, it's for all the work that we're doing, it's the case type. Data is for the data. So what is int? Does anyone have a guess? Someone said integer, not integer. Integrations. In Pega, we have a place in a naming convention to say that my integrations are associated with this application. And I'll even show you how I can say that integration is associated with this application at a certain layer. What layer do I want it to be associated with? All right, so we have, if I take off a little bit more, well, let's see, if I take off the go-go, come all the way back, you'll see a lot of other classes. Here's a go-go dash data. What do you think the FW is for? You guys a hint. What do you think the FW is for? Maximum.
I think it stands for framework.
Framework. There we go. You guys see that? If I wanted to create a class in the framework layer and put rules in that class so that they're at that layer, I do that because this is called my naming convention. I have a certain pattern naming convention. We have directed and indirected pattern naming. I'll talk about it later on, 3 or 4 days from now, but I want you to get the concept, what's the underlying features of Pega and what's really going on here. Because the system is really so good from the app studio, you don't have to know any of this. And that's good for business people. They don't want to know any of this. But from a developer's perspective, from a technical perspective, you have to know this because Pega is purchased to solve complex solutions or to solve complex problems simply. That's one of their tags. How do we solve complex problems simply? You do it with Pega. So I'm gonna put this work back where it is. Okay. Now, for you guys who are those programmers, I can right click here on any class and go inheritance, and it shows me my inheritance model. We'll talk about that later on too, but just know, again, this is a very robust and informative system. It shows you where you are. Now, notice that these are my case types under this parent. Here's a limitation. And this is why you have to, if you're a technical, if you have a technical role, you have to know about Dev Studio. Anything that I create in App Studio, anything that I create in my App Studio, it can only go to the class associated with that case type, the assistant request. All rules that I create with App Studio, they by default will only go into that particular class. So there's no capability here for me to put it up in the parent. So I want to make that distinction. This is for that business analyst, architect to do design work, to not do technical implementation work. Okay. Let's see here. In LSA, we'll talk about the strategies, the data model. Let's take a look at the data model. So if you go to App Studio, I want to look at the data model. I just click on the data model. This is very, very robust. So this is my data model. These are all of the properties I have access to. It shows it to me on one page. I can even go back to overview. If you go back to overview, come down to your data objects, and it gives you a different view of the data model. I'll come back and talk about that later on, but I can see all of my information right here. This is everything that I have to deal with. I could go to Dev Studio. It's not as clear, but I go to Dev Studio, go to my Data Explorer, and I see all of my data that's there. Two different ways to see the same information for what? For collaboration. The BA would understand the first one. An SA would probably want to look at this one and say, okay, let me take a look at the details. Here I have, this is my data pages. If you guys are familiar with how to go and get data, bring it back, we call them data pages. I can look at if there's any records that's in that particular database table. I can add records here, import and out records. I can do many things from a technical perspective. But I'm showing you what the yin and the yang. I'm showing you the BA view versus the technical view. It's a collaborative tool. If you don't get anything else from today's lecture, it's a collaborative tool. It's very comprehensive. It's very integrated. And it's done and it's purchased to do big, complex solutions. That's the purpose of Pega. All right. So let's talk about documentation. In Pega, we have the ability to do documentation. Documentation is important. And what's cool about Pega is you are building out the artifacts. It's actually using those artifacts that you build out to actually build you a document. It'll create a Word document for you. I'm going to show you how to look at some of that. But part of the process, part of the project is to make sure that you have the appropriate documentation. You need to document your technical architecture and your design decisions. So what is that you're doing? Your MLPs, your sprints, your iterations, the phases that you're in. Are you using a implementation architecture or framework architecture or both? What's the difference between the two? We'll have a conversation about that. When do I use a framework versus when do I use an implementation? When do I use a combination of both to build on top of that? Which workshops are we running? Which DCO workshops do we run? Do we pull together our business teams and our technical teams to make things happen? What is our baseline for design? What is being built? What's the micro journey? All of these have to be documented. So let's take a look at, where do we go to look at some documentation? I'll go back to app, if you will, follow me, go back to App Studio, and you'll see that we looked at the manage profile, we look at the application documents. So if you click on this now, it's not going to generate anything because you've not done anything yet. But when you create your case life cycles and you create your processes, your stages and your steps, your channels and your personas, then it will generate a document for you. That's really cool. It'll generate what we call a SOX compliant document, SOX, a SOX compliant document. It'll be formatted, it'll have a table of contents, it'll have index, it'll have everything in it. And it's pulling all of that information from what you've built in your App Studio or in your Dev Studio when it looks at the case types. It pulls all that together for you in a document. Now, let me show you another place that you can go to. So let's change to Dev Studio, get into more of a technical view of it. I'll close some of this information here. And I can go to configure an application. And here's profile. And if you click on that, remember I talked about where you can add user storage. You can also add requirements to the system. So the requirements are for the entire application, not for a particular case type. So you have the requirements. You can add specifications. And you can create specifications, and those are rule types. A requirement is a rule type, a specification is a rule type. How do I know that that is a rule type? Let's go over the records. The records will give me my index of all of my rule types that I have. And when I look at my application definition category, then requirements and specification, they are one of the 209 rules that we have. Rule types. So I can create rule instances. I don't think I've created anything here. Yeah, so there's nothing created there. There's a lot of specifications that are created, but these were created for Pega. They were created for the Pega platform. By going open it, you'll see a rules form again, and it'll have tabs of information you can fill in. Here's your tabs of information, and each tab gives you the capability to fill in that information. At its lowest technical level, that's all Pega is. It's a rules form where you fill in tabs of information. Now, eventually, when it goes through that rules resolution process, remember I talked about rules assembly, rules resolution, it converts all of these rule instances off of the rules form into Java. And then the Java hotspot compiler takes over. It then loads it into the JVM, and then it's up and running. So at the end of the day, Pega uses Java for the execution of its executable code. Now, the other thing you need to know that when I create these requirements and specifications, I'll show you later on that when I want to have a developer or a system architect work on a particular UI, I can attach the requirement to that particular rule or to that particular component. So now that person doesn't have to go all over trying to find documentation, a document sheet there. They can go right to the UI that the BA created, know that there's an attached requirement, and look at that and say, oh, this is what I need to do. Or know that there's a user story that's associated with it. So it's all about the collaboration. Let's take another look at what else we can do. Let's go to configure, go to application, come down to tools, and go to document. So here we have 6 different types of documents. We have the old, what they call the old legacy documents. It's the application profiler. This pulls enough information. It's kind of high level. You want to give it to managers, stakeholders, talk about what needs to be done within the project. Application document, that's a bit more comprehensive. It's going to give you the case types and all the flows and the data model and all the personas that's associated with it. In the specification, those are all of the specifications that you created for a particular application. Okay. And now they have 3 new ones that they've added. That it's an overall application view. Again, that's a little high level for the stakeholder. It's a data model. That's a detailed data dictionary view of all of your data. And then there's a gap analysis. So they look at the artifacts and Agile Workbench, and they see what you have and what you're actually wanting to build and go from there. So those are the major places when we talk about documentation that you would go. You have requirements and specification rules that you can create. You have documentation that you can generate. Let's see if I can just go into one here. I won't generate it. Sometimes it takes a long time for these to happen, but let's go and click and let's see what happens. So I want the go-go road. I want a high level. Let's see if I do full application. Short description. I want to include all chapters. And it's spinning and it's spinning and it's spinning. I probably should not have chosen full application. All right. So now, but it took that time to go and gather everything that I've done. And I then can generate the document. Now, I don't know what it's going to produce or how much of it got saved in this testing or training environment. But if you're in a totally open environment, what I would expect to see is a Word document that shows me all of the case types that I have, some of my data objects that I have, any instructions that I have for users when they go to a UI. It's going to show me all of that. And that's all documentation that a BA doesn't have to write, that the system generates it. And so that's one of the pluses in Pega, is that you go and you look at that and you see what they actually do. So let's see if it actually generated something for me. It did. Now, I had to open it in Pages, but here is my application document. It shows me some flows that's there, the different flows that I've created. And that's about the limit of it because I didn't fill out all of the other information. But as you go through and you build your artifacts, you put in the appropriate short descriptions and all the information that you need to do, then you get a more complete and more comprehensive document. Okay? So someone tell me, where are the 2 places that I can go to look at documentation? Where's the place? In App Studio. Let's go back to App Studio. Where do I go in App Studio if I want to generate documentation? Anyone? Let me pull up the chat so I can see if you guys are chatting with me. So it's always a challenge to get you to talk after lunch. All right. Everybody's okay. So Muhammad said I'd go to application document and I go to export right here. So that's exactly where you go. So make sure you understand that for documentation. Where do I go if I want to create user stories? We talked about that before lunch earlier this morning. Where do I go for user stories? Where's my navigation? Because that's what you have to do in the morning. You go to the Agile. Somalia says I go to the Agile workbench, and that's right here. All right. Okay, so where do I go in Dev Studio? Where do I go in Dev Studio to find requirements and specifications that I can create? Someone? Send it to me in chat or tell me what do I have to click? What's my click path? How do I get to requirements and specification? I did it fairly quickly. That's why I like to review this, because as you're building your project, you need to be able to do that. Okay, one way to do it, someone said go to records, right? Yeah, so I can go to records. I can see them here, and tell me another way. Okay, I can go to configure, and then where from configure? Configure application profile, and then you get to the requirements and specification and analysis. And where do I go to create the documents? I want to generate those 6 different documents. I need access to those 6 different documents. Where do I go? All right, absolutely. You go to tools, and then you go to document, and now you have all of that information there. Good information for a BA. If you're a BA and you're working in Pega, that's great information. Even if you're an essay, you need to know where that information is. In addition to that, there's even a sizing document that you can do. Similar to the case type backlog, but gives you some different sizings that you can actually do there. All right, wonderful. So hopefully you got a good understanding of the places we go for documentation in Pega and the types of documentation that you get. I can tell you from a BA perspective, it's excellent because instead of you writing all of that into Word, if you will build your solutions out through the design of your App Studio and you put in the proper short descriptions or long descriptions with the artifacts, with the stages and the steps and the processes that you're building, then you'll get a really complete document. And you actually don't have to write it. In App Studio, it's for low-code authoring. It is the platform that we use with a graphical interface. We have the different metaphors that we associate with it in order for us to do our configuration. And as I mentioned before, using App Studio and Dev Studio together is for the collaboration and the power of being able to build a solution together. So what I want to do is make sure that we touch every aspect of this environment before we go forward so that you will know how to navigate. And when you start out, you'll start out in App Studio, and then when you have to, then you'll end up going into Dev Studio. So let's just kind of start here. You see that if I go and click on Pega, this will allow me to switch to the different studios. I have App Studio, I have Dev Studio. Does anyone have anything other than App Studio or Dev Studio? Because we actually have 4 studios in Pega, but based upon the operator ID in the access group configuration, I can determine what that user can see. This user has App Studio and Dev Studio. If someone click there, do you have the Prediction Studio? Do you have the Admin Studio? No. So you have the Prediction Studio and you don't have the Admin Studio. Okay. Those are the 4 major, we'll call them portals. Okay. So Muhammad says he has prediction as well. All right. So, and so we call those portals. Portals is our view into Pega, how we see Pega. If I'm an App Studio person, that means I'm probably a BA or a power user that they give me some capabilities in Pega. If I'm a Dev Studio user, I could be a BA, but with limited access to some of the Dev Studio features, or I could be an SA with full features to the Dev Studio. If I'm in the Prediction Studio, that's probably mean that I'm working with the decisioning product that Pega has, and I need some integration points that I need to put into the Dev Studio. If I have the Administration Studio, that means that I'm responsible for adding operators, creating access groups, managing security, authorization, and authentication, and all of that that's going on. So 4 different studios, 4 different major roles that you fit into. So let's take a look at here over to the right. This will show all of your applications. As you log in, your login will specify, based upon this access group, what applications you get access to. So in this case, there are 2 applications that I have access to. And I have the capability to create a new application. Before the end of the day, I'll show you how to create a new application, because for tomorrow, not only will you look at use cases, you'll get into your virtual team server. Someone will be an administrator. You'll create 4 other operator IDs and enable those so that then you can go and create an application. So we're doing this all from the ground floor so you get a good understanding of what it means to implement a Pega project. Typically, the LSA does the majority of that, but we want you guys to be able to walk through and to see what that's all about. Okay, so the overview gives you a general overview of the application. As I mentioned before, we've already gone through these 2, these 3. If I want to look at all of my personas, so click on the personas. You guys only have 1. I've worked on mine and I've created 4. I have 4 personas: an audit, CSR, manager, and a user that I have here. And for that persona, I have 5 types of users that I have for managers. So a persona is a grouping of my user types. Let me say that again. A persona is a grouping of my user types. I have different types of personas of people here, and then a portal or a page. So what do I want that user to see when Pega comes up in a production environment? So I can assign him a portal. So in day 2, or I should say in day 3, you guys will be building portals. So we'll go and look at the UI and say, okay, we set up our operators. We have our use cases that we're going to work on. We have our user stories that we are building from our use cases. And now what we're going to do is create an application. In that application, we've identified certain personas. From those personas, we're going to create portals to say when this particular type of persona comes up, we're going to give them this type of portal. Notice how easy that was. I can switch between what I see in a production environment, type of production environment, my runtime environment, to my development environment. You guys see that? Make sure you didn't blink when I did that, right? From a production environment to my runtime environment. And this is my portal. This is my portal for this particular user. Notice I am in the user portal. What are the benefits here? Benefits are I can design something in App Studio, and then I can quickly switch over and run it and see what it's going to look like to that user for that particular persona. If I want to look at the auditor, I go and click on it here. That's a different persona. Not persona, that's a different portal. Guess what I can do? What if I want to see what it looks like on a mobile phone? Oh, that's cool. Have the capabilities to do that also. All of this is built in Pega on one code base. That's the power of Pega. What you're building to optimize and to implement on several channels. Take it back, go back, exit that, my preview, and I'm right back into my development environment. Very, very fluid, very comprehensive. We used to have to get into Dev Studio, and it took us 3 to 8 steps to build a portal. And now with the latest version, they've moved it all the way to App Studio to say, hey, you just go and click on a channel and create a portal from there. So I can go here and I can click on it, and it gives me the capability to say, what do I want to show on my panel for my portal? Here's the landing page that I have. Do I want home, dashboard, spaces? If I don't want it, then I can delete it. If I need to add something to it, say that I want a certain case type to show up because it's a manager, and in that manager portal, I then can add a case type so that for that particular manager group and that persona, that's what they see. So those are some of the decisions that you'll have to make when you have 2 or 3 different type of users. When you're building your portal, your user portal, then what capabilities will you give them? What menus and what case types will you make available to them? You'll work on this Friday. You'll see that rapid development really happens in Pega. You can move really fast, really swiftly in building out your solution fairly quickly. And then through your iterations, you start adding more functionality to it. All right, so let's see. So I'm here back at the overview. We looked at the personas. Let's look at the channels. Oh, matter of fact, I just showed you the channels, but these are the different channels that you have in Pega. A web mashup, digital message, email, and then you can talk if you want to. Let's come back here. The case types. So all the different case types, I think you guys only have 1, but I have 4 that I've built out for my application. And then, of course, since mine is built out, I put quite a few data objects. How do I get to my data objects? Now, I like this view. This is a really, really good view. This shows me my data object. So this is These are all of the properties. Well, these are all of the properties for that object. It even shows me all the records that's in it. So in other words, this is a database table that is mapping to, but I don't have to do a utility database load to load records in, to load rows in, or I don't have to do insert statements using SQL. I can come right here in Pega if I have the security through my access group and have the authorization and the privilege. I can add rows right here, and Pega will allow me to do that. A data page. Now, I've not talked about a data page, but someone, let me call on someone. Give me what you think a data page is. Who do I want to select here? Let's see, William. I don't know if I've called on you today. William, what is a data page? What do you think your concept of a data page would be?
Well, from my understanding, or what I think it is a for a data page, it's like I guess it would be a page in your database containing X amount of rows of information, and then I don't know if you're querying that sort of for information, you might need to like flip through, I guess, or iterate through the pages to get the sort of information you need, maybe.
Exactly what it is. Similar to a data access object, right? It is the main rule. I would say it's the most popular rule that we have, a data page. The main rule that says, for instance, you typically want to take something from a UI, got to map it internally so that you can build and construct your call to your data endpoint. Normally it's a database table. So you build your query, you call the database table, it returns the result set to that data page. Now that rule owns that space, and then you take it and you either can store it and share that information with other types of users, or you then can just map it right back to the UI and then move on. So we'll talk a lot about data pages and data models, but that's a key rule, key component that you'll need to configure and know how to use. All right, over here, you guys see the preview where you can go back and forth from my design environment to my runtime preview environment so that I can see what I've done. The next icon gives me the ability to look at the resources. So this is help. So you can click on help just to take a look at that. Here is where I can do some internal communication. So we have the Pulse, or we call it Pulse, P-U-L-S-E. So the Pulse gives you the ability to have conversations. You saw the Pulse that was on the user story where you want to talk and have conversations with people on your team. So all of that happens so you can collaborate with different people. And then this is just an assistant. This is where we get to the stories, the bugs, and the feedback. And all right, so this is for branching. Does anyone know what branching is other than a tree? Let's see, let's go to Anujan, A-N-U-J-A-N, Anujan. What is branching? You have any idea? Okay. So I don't know if he's here. So with Punan,
I saw them unmute their mic. I think they're just having audio issues.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
they can talk in chat.
In chat, yes. I can
Sorry.
hear you. I can hear you now.
Sorry, what was the question?
Do you know what branching is? Branching. You have a concept or an idea of when we talk about branching?
It is when you, it's in software development where you have two different versions of a program running continuously in parallel.
Okay, yeah. That's actually the reason for using branching, so that you didn't have a core, you have a stub to say this is the stable code, but at the same time, I need my front end group to work on something and my back end group to work on it simultaneously. So you spin off a branch for both of those. So they're working in parallel, right? They're working in parallel. Now that they finish, now you got to merge it back into that branch. So Pega gives you that capability to say, here's a branch. And the way we set up a branch in Pega, we're going to set it up so that it's part of the application rule, and it is a rule set. So let me see if I can find that for you. So I'm going to go back to Dev Studio. I'm going to show you a different way this time to get to the application rule. I'm going to go to application, because I know this is the application rule, and it shows me that here's the go road application rule. So I'm going to pause for a second just so you can get there. So instead of me going down to the operator and going to click that and then looking at the access group and operator rule, remember I said Pega is very comprehensive. I just go to records, go to the application definition category, go to the application rule type, and it shows me all of the application rule instances. Rule instances, rule types, category. So now I go to go road, and notice you've seen this before. I don't know if yeah, I actually did start it. I didn't think I had the recording on. So we're good. You've seen this before, where you see the CB base, the built on applications, right? But you may not have noticed that I can add branches over here. Wow. So I can add branches. This is where a LSA or a senior system architect would go in and say, okay, we have branches for the UI team. I'm going to only add branches to their particular application rule so that we can then see it. So that's where the concept of branching comes from. Okay, then we get into, hold on, I don't think I finished. Yeah, we got into data options. Okay, so then over to the left, we get into case types. Case types in Pega, those are the major functions that you're going to implement in Pega for an minimal lovable product. You can have one to many case types. In most cases, there's only one. Sometimes there's two. And in a case type, this is what we're talking about. This is the work to be done. This is the work to be done. Where do we get that term work from? So we're wanting to create a request. That's the work that we want to do. Let me tell you in Pega where that term work came from. Remember I told you, showed you all of those classes in a hierarchy on those layers? Remember I showed you that? Let's come back to that. What is the full name of this class? I'm going to open up sysadmin, look at the class. Okay. Now, do you see the full? What is the full name of this class? You guys notice that the word work is in it. Remember I talked about the pattern matching? the pattern matching. So when you create a case type that you create in your design is implemented technically as a work class that you see from your technical perspective. That's the work to be done. That's where we get that terminology in Pega when we look at a case type and we say, what work is there to be done? Because there is a work class that implements all of this logic. And so in your case type, we will talk about what is a stage, what is a process, when do I need a step? And notice that in this architecture, I can have one stage that may have several processes. In my first create stage, I want to do this process first. It happens in a sequential fashion. I do this, this, unless I specify that I want one to be done in parallel. Now they can be done simultaneously. So if you don't see it's in parallel, then all of these steps will happen. Here's a process, this step will happen. Here's a process, and this step will happen. When it finishes this, notice the chevron. See the little greater than sign? It says automatically then go to the next stage. All right. In this stage, I have one process and two steps. And when it finishes, where does it go next? Based upon the chevron, where does it go next?
Service stage.
That's right, it goes to the service stage. And how many processes do you see in the service stage? Now you guys should be getting the hang of this. How many processes do you see in the service stage?
4.
Those are steps. How many processes?
2.
2. There we go. Here's a process. Here's a process. See that? 2 processes. And then when it finishes this stage, it goes to the resolution stage. And then after the resolution stage, where does it go?
That's it.
Kind of a trick. That's it. That's kind of a trick question. All right. And notice something. This little red line indicates that it's a resolution stage. It is an end point. It's a termination point of my application. I can have multiple resolution stages. I think I built. Yeah, here are my alternate stages. These are resolution stages too. So let me ask you this. Does anyone know what a happy path is? You ever heard the term happy path? Pranav, let me ask you, Pranav, have you ever heard of a happy path?
So it's like
did?
no
Yes.
alternative paths.
I'm sorry, can you say it again just a little bit louder?
So it does not have any alternative paths.
That's right. So it doesn't have any alternate paths, and those are terms that we use in Pega. This is the happy path. So the chevrons indicate when I finish one stage, I go to the next stage. I finish this, I go to this next stage. I finish this, go to the next stage. So it says when I'm doing this work, this assist request case type work, my happy path is create, validate, service, and resolution. My alternate paths are here. I create them separately: approval, rejection, and cancellation. So you will be tasked with the work that you're going to do. Part of that is looking at your user stories and identifying your happy path. And then coming back and identifying your alternate path that you have for endpoints or to allow you to go back and do something else. Okay. So if these are processes, then you see these are steps. But before I get to steps, let's talk about a process. Notice that a process has a little diagram that's associated with it. So if you have one, or I think since you guys don't have one, why don't you create your own stage? Just call it my stage. You guys can get in the habit of creating a stage. And I apologize up front for the systems being slow. These are training systems. They're not optimized for peak performance. Okay. So you can create a stage and then save it. Save often in Pega. It's in the cloud, but sometimes the rules don't get updated. So you want to make sure that if you do something significant or if you're thinking, then always hit the save button. Okay. So very simple for you to create a stage. Okay. Now let's come and create a step. It won't let you create a process unless it has at least one step. Let's use this collection information. So what do you think the collection information type of step is for? You think it's for data or for UI? Okay. So if you guys look in the chat, Nadar is showing that there's a link to where it's something close to what I'm doing. So it may have more of it built out for you if you don't have anything.
Yeah, it has the exact same like
Oh,
the life
does it?
cycle is the exact same in it. Yeah. It also has the two studios, just app dev and dev instead of the production one. Yeah, so I think it's the exact same.
Wonderful. All right. So if you guys want to get something closer to what I'm doing, fine. If you like to kind of go out on your own, that's absolutely fine too. So this is the collection. So I'll say my first screen. Okay. Now, notice that when I create this first step, it's going to name my process for me. Probably want to change the name of my process. And I'll just say my own process. All right. And I'll pause for a second just for you to catch up. These are fundamental click and create points that you'll do for a case life cycle. Very simple, but I'll show you what's happening underneath the covers. There's an awful lot going on. Lots of rules being created. I'll show you where those rules are going and how they are being created. Okay. So has everyone been able to create a stage, a process, and a step? Good. Okay. So right now the tool looks easy and very simple to use. The answer is it's always easy. It's always simple to use, but don't confuse simplicity, ease of use with simplicity when it comes to trying to create something. Okay. It's easy to use, but it can also create very complex solutions at the same time. All right, so now that you've created this and save it, make sure that you save it. Notice that when you go from one artifact to the other, this content pane opens up for further configuration. Notice that. When I come to process, it's content pane opens up. You know the way you want to relate this? These are tabs that you configure. You know what it's doing? It's finding a category with the right rule type to create a rule instance, and it's configuring the tabs in that rule based upon the tabs that are here. Wow. And so if you do it here, it's really easy. If you go to the rule, you have to think a little bit more of what you're doing. So you want to try to do as much as you can in App Studio, drop into Dev Studio when you can't do it in App Studio. And then the same thing with when I come to a stage, it gives me the capability to say, is this a resolution case? So if I put that there, it even gives me a capability to set the status. I can take this out. There are some default statuses that I then can put there. Out of the box, OOTB, already built in for you. So why create another status when this is saying that this is actually the end? So I'll just say resolve cancel. And I then come back and save it. And you should see it should create another red line for me. Simple implementation execution. Okay, so let's actually take a look at this. Remember I said these create rules, or I should say they create data for rules or metadata for rules, but this is one rule that a BA will have to use all the time. Now you'll come to your process, you'll add steps, but if you go to your process over here, you can see I can open this in Dev Studio, or I can click here and it should open and give me a read-only view. See that? So when I clicked on the icon itself, it gave me a read-only view. And you'll see that those steps, or that one step, turns into what we call a shape. This is one of the basic shapes. This is an assignment. We call it an assignment. It represents a UI. We call it a human step. We call it all those things. An assignment, a UI, a human step. It pauses the flow. It pauses the flow to say, now I need human intervention. That's an assignment. So every one of my flow rules will have a one start shape, and I can have multiple end shapes. One start shape, multiple end shapes. I can also add other shapes. I can add a decision shape, sub-process. I have automations that are semi-configured, and all I need to do is pass just a little bit of information. I have more advanced if I want to do approvals or duplicate search, a wait state. I have one if I want some conversation flow. So here's my point. Every time you see one shape here, it has an associated, why did it go back to there? I don't want to go all the way back. For one step, for one shape here, it represents one step in this view. So let me make sure you guys got it. If I go to the create request process flow rule, how many shapes will I see? I want to make sure you understand the concept. 4, absolutely. If I go to the resolve duplicate case, how many shapes will I see? 1, got it. So I think you guys are getting it right. So let's go to the validate request shape. Let's open it. how many shapes should I see? Validate request, right? Let's open it in read-only mode. Okay. Don't count the start and the end shapes, and you see 2. Here's a decision shape, and here's a reject change shape. Absolutely. So they are bidirectional. If I add a shape here, when I go back, I'll see it as a step there. When I add a step on the design, I go into the flow, I'll see a shape that represents it. Because when it creates this flow or it creates the shape, now I have to, it gives me the capability to configure it. And what is it ultimately doing? Finding the right rule, configuring the rule. All right. Go back to your case types. I want to go one step deeper. Now, this is an overview. This is a broad overview. I have a whole presentation that talks about all of this, but I want you to get familiar with this now. My own process. I saved it. It's part of the assist request. Now let's see if I can find it as a rule. All right, so let's, in order for me to find it as a rule, remember, I'm trying to remember my own process. I go to Dev Studio. I go to my Application Explorer, go to your Application Explorer, and you can choose any one of those processes. It doesn't have to be one you created, any one of the processes, right? I'll do a refresh just to make sure I'm getting the latest update. Right. Now, I know that it is a process flow rule, and there it is. Pega created that for me. Same shape. But I have additional configuration parameters in Dev Studio. I can pass in values to this flow shape. I can associate other pages of information in memory with this shape. I can do additional design, different processes, a lot of configuration here, very technical, but I can attach a specification here. Just about every rule in Pega will allow you to attach a specification, a requirement, and even a test case. So then when you go back and run the documentation, then that document will grab all of that and it will put that as part of the documentation. Okay. All right. So what we started at 1:30, right? And it's 2:35. Let's take a break until 2:45 and we will continue on. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Let's go ahead and continue on. It's talking about the App Studio. So if you would, turn your cameras on and let's get started. Let's get it started. I apologize if you guys heard some music. I wasn't intentionally playing it. Apparently I clicked something on my desktop and my music started playing. Okay, so let's do something a little bit more exciting. We've talked about App Studio, Dev Studio, but I still want to show you the power in App Studio because they move so much functionality into it. We used not to be able to do some of the things. We've already talked about channels, explore data. We'll talk about this later on, how we do reporting. We have reports that are built into Pega. So that's part of our Explore data. They call them insights. Insights are, think of it as snippets of a report that are reused. So you can insert these insights or reuse these insights into other reports. To do that, we have some library information. We don't cover that very much in this class. But user, you will be going into user management. So make a note. You'll definitely have to go into user management when you're building your project and build and update your personas and associate them with a portal. So I want you to make that connection. That's going to happen probably Friday. You'll go into users, look at the personas, and associate them with a portal. And that's a key skill for a BA to understand and an SA to be able to do on a project. You'll also look at branding and themes. That's a BA activity where you can add logos and you can display certain types of information. What type of themes? How do you get it to match your branding and your colors? All of this can be done here now in Pega. Again, we used to have to do that on the portal rule, the skin rule, many other rules, but now I think you're learning the concept. If you do it in App Studio, it's going to find the right category, the right rule type, create the rule instance, and put it in the appropriate place for you. If you don't use App Studio, you have to know which set of rule or sets of rules that you have to do. But over a period of time, if you're an SA, if you're a technical developer, you'll start learning that. Let's see, anything else in settings? So that's all that you'll need to do there. Down at the bottom, don't miss this. Down at the bottom, you see, if you click on that little gadget, you'll see some options. Here's an accessibility inspector. So for those who have limitations, disabilities, then Pega has a way that you can implement certain features so that you can help individuals who have a problem distinguishing between different colors. Here is a tracer. So if you guys have done any type of development per se, you can start a tracer. We can set so many things in Pega. But no, this is going to take a performance hit. You turn the tracer on, it's tracing a lot of information. So you want to be careful about that. So we're not going to turn the tracer on, but know that that can be done. We even have the opportunity to see something that's in memory. When I'm running my case type, remember the case type is a class. And if you remember object-oriented concepts, classes are instantiated into objects. And this is the object that's in memory that's going to manage the data model. So we'll have conversations about how to use the clipboard as one of the major tools that we look at when we're trying to debug some of the issues that we run into. Well, I believe I covered everything. So you should, oh, no, I did not cover here. No, here in the App Studio, if they don't give me the privilege, I can't see my operator ID in my access group, but I'll show you how to do that in the Dev Studio. But what I do want to do right quickly, just so that you guys can see the power of what we can do in Pega, because you'll have to create your own application. But I want you to be able to go through it. We're going to create an application right quickly, just the framework. Remember that framework where it talked about the layers? I want to create the layers for you. No real case types at this point. I just want you to be able to establish the foundation, the technical foundation of an application. Go up to the application menu and you'll see a feature called New Application. Click on New Application. Now, this is interesting. 12 years ago, we had to build all of this by hand. But now they give you 3 screens, you fill it out, and it builds the base structure for you in a matter of minutes. So we want to build it from scratch. So we'll say continue. You can choose either one of these, Constellation or traditional UI. Constellation is the new one that we're moving toward. I can tell you that Pega is working to make it fully functional. It's not fully functional at this point. Most people still use the traditional, but with Constellation, you have to know a little bit about React and some other components, and they're not quite there yet. But just for our example, we'll go ahead and say Constellation. Now we need to name our application. The naming of an application should be something broad. It should not be specific. Give you an example. If I'm going to create an application for Microsoft, I would call my application Microsoft Office. So then my application would be Microsoft Office. My case types, now watch this so you understand the paradigm. My case types would be Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Access. So do you understand the relationship of what an application is versus what a case type is? Case types are major functionalities of an application. So I want to make sure you're clear with that. So we're going to create an application, make it something general. Like for instance, I like to say wealth management, technical system. Okay. So I know there are major functionalities under that. Okay. Or you may want to call it the airplane system or the reservation management system. So there's major functionality under that. Doesn't matter. Just I want you to understand what the naming should be. So when you build your application, you're understanding that here's the overarching name of the application, that I have major functionality that I'm going to implement as case types. We want to click on the advanced configuration. And in the advanced configuration, what you see, remember those layers that had Pega platform, and it had framework and implementation, it had division, right? So it actually had, and it had organization. Now you see this. Do I want this to be an implementation, or do I want it to be a framework? Frameworks are more generic for reuse. Implementations are more specific. That's all I'll say right now. I'll talk a lot more about it later on, but that's all I'll say about it right now. If I say I want this to be a framework, no, actually, I want to come back. I want it to be an implementation. Specify my language. Here's my version. And then what is my organization name? I'm going to call it the Done organization. Use the first 4 letters of your first or last name. Okay. What division do I want? I want it to be in I don't know, personal versus corporate. Okay. And I wanted to tell it to generate a divisional layer. So now I'm going to get all 3 of my layers that I have for, I got the Pega platform. I'm going to get an organizational layer. I'm going to get a divisional layer, and I'm going to get an implementation layer. That's that situational layer cake. I'm building my layer cake based upon my discovery and my Pega Express and getting ready for prepare or in prepare. Discovery and prepare I've got enough information as an LSA that I know that I need an implementation, I need an organization, I need a divisional layer, and I have all of my layers there. So now I can start with a basic foundation. And notice that it creates it here. My organization is done. My division is PER. So notice that it abbreviates it, cuts it off, because it's one long name. And so you can't have a name, I believe, over 68 characters. Your class name can't be beyond 68 characters. So make sure you keep them limited. The name of my application is Wealth MA. And here's my work group that I have. That's all you have to do in Pega to build an application. Now, it's going to create layers for you. It's going to create hundreds of rules starting out to build that whole foundation. So let's go ahead and save it. I already called Wealth W Management. I've already created one. Yep, so it creates it there. I do a save, takes you right back to here. And I'll do a create. Now, it takes a while for that to happen, so I'm going to move this over to the left, and I'm going to finish the lecture. And then we'll come back if we have time. We'll take a look at it. In Infinity 23, we have the ability to have Gen AI help you build some of the layouts. When I say layouts, it really helps you with some of the data integration. It helps you with your case type, your case life cycle. Unfortunately, in Infinity 23, it's really only for a preview. It's not production ready. Pega says that it will not be production ready until Q1 of 2024. So even though some of it is built in, some of it you can only read about it, some of it you have limited functionality. But just know in Pega, Gen AI is coming. It's coming in full force, and everything should be implemented in 2024. And I've talked a little bit about the collaboration tools that we have in Pega. Out of the box messaging is Pulse. You guys saw that, where you can post and start your conversations with someone that's on your team. Going forward, you can even set it up to send out email notifications. If you are a developer, there's a way for you to go in and add descriptive tags so that you can then sort and find certain relevant information with your tag widgets. So all of that functionality is built into Pega, so it can be a better collaboration tool for you and for business and for IT to work together. All right. So finishing this section, you now know enough information so that tomorrow when you come in, we will read an interview script. And which interview script will we read? If you go to your student folder with me right quickly. In your student folder, you see the use case. Bring up the use case. This is the use case that we'll be working from. So what I would like for you to do is before tomorrow morning, at least read over it, skim over it, read it. It is a very simple interview. Think of this as part of discovery, so that now you can start listening to what the scenario is, what we need to do to make it happen. And notice it's very limited information. So we're taking you from nothing but an interview to building a full-fledged project in one day, right? So you learn a little bit today, you build a little bit tomorrow. You learn a little bit the next day, you build a little bit tomorrow. So each iteration will go fast, and it will improve upon your design as we go forward. Okay. So make sure you take a look at that before tomorrow. We will read it in class. You will be able then to leverage the PED approach to start outlining your phases, have some informal DCO to talk about, here's a user story and what are the artifacts that we need to implement in Pega. And so at the end of the day in the morning, we're going to spend a lot of time creating user stories. So put you in groups of 5. We have 3 teams. And so the effort will be to read that, create user stories, and you guys will have your own. Not unless you want to communicate with each other, we'll bring you back together every day at the end, have some communication there, but be able to leverage each other's groups to say, well, I figured this out, or he figured that out, or she figured these things out going forward. But anyway, we're finished with this section. You're ready for what we have set for tomorrow. And that allows me to take a little bit more time here and make sure that you understand what you should have learned today. Now, this information that I am presenting to you, these questions, they are coming from the certification. So all of the lecture material that I covered this morning covers the 10% of the certification. If you look at it, you'll see that we've talked about best practices for Pega approach. We've talked about value and best practice frameworks. We've talked about direct capture of objectives and the 4 phases of a Pega Express delivery. So in one day's time, you've learned 10% of the certification if you were taking the business architect exam. Now, how do you create user stories, bugs, feedbacks in a backlog? I want someone to be able to show me that with your own screen. Who would like to volunteer? Who can show me how to create user stories in your own environment, bugs, feedbacks, and, well, we don't have to really do a backlog, but if you can show me how to create user stories, bugs, and feedbacks. Daniel. All right, Daniel, if you would, let me stop sharing and turn it over to you.
Okay,
And
sure.
if you would bring it up on your screen and we'll go from there.
Are you able to see my screen?
I can.
Okay. So to create a story, you would have to be in the App Studio, and then you'd have to click on the Agile Workbench.
Okay.
From there, you can click on this plus icon and create either a story, bug, and feedback. And once you click on them, you can input the specific information that needs to be provided. So the name, description, complexity, priority, any attachments, and any feedback.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Thank you so much. Do you have any idea where what document you could use for your backlog? And I'll give you a hint. I put it in the student folder. Can anyone else answer that question? Can anyone else help Daniel out? I'm sorry, say it again.
Case type?
Yes. So the case type log. Daniel, can you bring up your case type log?
Sure.
It was that yellow one. So this is not on the environment itself, but it's it's a spreadsheet that would be in your student folder. So go to your student folder.
Oh, okay, my student folder. 1 second.
Yeah.
Yes.
There it
Is
is.
it this? Yep.
Okay. And one of the tabs you could, I believe there is the work backlog. See the work backlog? It's at the very bottom,
Yep.
right there. There we go. Okay. All right. So that shows you where you can create user story bugs, feedbacks, and the backlog. Thank you very much, Danny. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. So let's go to the next question that we have here. Who would like to volunteer to explain and describe the 4 phases of PED? You don't really have to tell me the best practices. I'll show you the screen for that. But 4 phases. Who would like to explain the 4 phases? Yes, go ahead. I believe that
Discovery phase. Sorry,
okay.
that's what I was talking. A discovery phase, then the preparation phase, building phase, and then adoption.
Okay. So what type of activities are happening in those phases? Can you give me any
Discovery
indication?
is about research of like user stories and everything needed for the project. And then the preparation is building the project, discussing the vision, the outcomes of the project. And then building is when you finally start using the studio to create models and examples of the project, right? And then for the adoption is basically you revise if it's ready to go live, and if not, then you return to the previous approaches, the previous steps, depending on whether or not it meets the requirements.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And let me go to, here are some of the best practices for architect. And let's back up and look at where we got here. We talked about the benefits and the features of Pega Express delivery. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one. What 3 pillars must exist for the estimation tool to automatically calculate and what information is provided? So, who would like to volunteer to take us to the estimation tool? How do you get to the estimation tool? From App Studio, main page, application profile. So, did that give you enough hints? Someone would like to volunteer? Does anyone know how to get there?
You press manage and then you press estimator.
Okay. Is that you, Michael? Would you share your screen and show us how to get there?
I can't share my screen because I'm on the call on one screen and my other screen is the one I'm looking at.
Gotcha. All right, so I will bring up the environment. Why don't you walk me through it? Hold on. Let me find my environment. I lost it. Here we go. All right, so what do I do?
Go to overview.
Go back here. Put overview. Okay.
And then under application profile, the manage button.
There we go.
And then estimator. is the third one from the left.
Okay. There we go. So thank you for getting me to this location. But what three pillars of information is always needed? Not just for the estimation tool, but it's always needed for us to make sure we understand what the MLP is and everything we're trying to do. So it's three pillars coming out of DCO. They all say the same thing. Does anyone know what are the three pillars?
I think one was like personas.
There we go. One is personas.
And then like data or
That's right. Data and integration.
data. Okay.
And
I'm
then
not sure
what's
the
the
third
other one?
one.
Can anyone tell me? Case types. Case types. Right. So all you have to do is go to the case life cycle in Pega. Go to the App Studio. Just waiting for it to come up. And you'll see at the top is the work to be done, but for that case type, and then you'll see the personas and channels there. Then at the bottom, you'll see data and integration. You need those three. You need those three when you're working on a Pega application and building a solution. I don't know why mine's taking so long anymore, but that's fine. So let's go to the next question that we have. Describe the DCO process and the benefits. Describe the DCO process and the benefit. So I'm going to ask you, which slide can we go to that will tell us that information? I'll just make it easier on you guys. Which slide can I go to? It's going to tell you that information about DCO and the process. And let me bring
Slide
up.
11.
Okay. Let's go there. Let me bring up the chat. I don't know if people are chatting with me. So let's go back to DCO. Notice that it's also where we look at micro journeys or case types, same thing in general, personas and channels, data and integration. And it's this whole process of being able to have a continuous cycle of collaboration, integration, validation. Again, collaboration, integration, validation. Continuous cycle when you're taking those user stories, sending them through a meeting in DCO to make sure that there is true collaboration in this iteration and you can validate it. Okay. And so it's focus, right? It's best practice. What are the best practice and principles? Is design thinking, which is human-centered approach to solving problems. The DCO being able to capture that and put it into the actual studio. Pega Express, which is the PED, understanding the approach and implementing Agile and Scrum. And then out of that, you get quality. One is value, the other is quality. Quality is low code, no code configuration through Pega. The DevOps for testing and automation. And then we do have what's called the predictive cloud that gives us holistic view of Pega and the operations there. All right, so what documented decisions and actions are needed to confirm the technical architecture? What documented decision? Now, before I ask you that, though, someone tell me, how do I get to all the documentation? Or how do I get to documented sources? Someone guide me through that in the application. Where would I where would I put my documented sources where that it can be read? Okay.
You'd go to your overview, and then there's a section called application documents, and you can export.
There we go. Yeah, so you can go there and export. And if I wanted to do it from App Studio, from Dev Studio, anyone remember the click path?
It's the configure application and then profile.
There we go. Configure application and profile, where I can do the requirements and specifications. That way I can document that. It's what I'm needing from a technical architectural perspective. A little different from user stories, where we're trying to build a story. Now we're trying to look at the lay of the land of what are some of the specifications that I need. Right? And then for me to run the document when I'm building something out, then I use this feature, and I can create those SOX compliant documents. Okay, so any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? All right, if not, let's see if we can go back to our environment here. So your environment should have completed, and you should be on, this is what I created. You should be able to see your new system. Do you see your new system? Give me a thumbs up. You saw your new system. All right, so this is your new system that you have created. It comes with one persona, 2 channels, no case types, no data objects. It's a shell for a beginning. So if I wanted to look at the layers that it created, if I wanted to look at the application layers, how would I get there? How would I get to the application layer? Can someone help me navigate? Look like someone's sending me chat. Okay, so Michael said, I forgot, how did you make a new system? So Michael, to make a new system, you know what? Let's ask the class. Let me ask the class. Class, how do we tell Michael to make a new system? Where do I go? Come on, guys.
You would go to the top. Oh.
Here. Yeah, so this is called the application menu. So Michael, I go to application menu, then I select new application. Then it asks me if I want to build from scratch. And then it asks me, do I want constellation or traditional? I chose constellation. You could have chosen the other one. Then it gives you a third window that says, what's your application name? So you put in the application name. Then at the very bottom, there's a link to go to advanced configurations. And then we updated advanced configurations, and we clicked on a checkbox for the division button. And then we did save. It brought me back to that screen. And then I hit the button to create. So that's how you create a new application. Okay. So this is my new application. Does anyone know how to tell me how to get to the applications? Notice here, this is showing me my my layer cake here. This is telling me what? Here's Pega, and in Pega platform, Constellation is built on it, and then wealth management is built on it. It's layered. That's the layer cake. Make sure you understand that. So each layer will have a set of rule sets. And what's in a rule set? All of the configured rules. So it's showing me this information. All right, so does anyone remember how I showed you that application rule? What if I told you to go to Dev Studio? Go to Dev Studio. In Dev Studio, go to Records. Which category, which one of these 16 categories do I go to? Guessing is allowed.
Application.
There we go. I go to application definition and I go to application. There it is. You should find yours. If you didn't use the same name as I did, you should find yours. And here's my application rule with my short description and when I created it. Did everyone find their application rule? Base foundation for the layer cake. How Pega builds an application. Now let's go ahead and open it. What is your application built on? Mine says it's built on Constellation. What is yours built on? Does yours have the UI kit, Pega UI kit, or does it have Constellation? Okay, Theme Cosmos. There we go. Theme Cosmos. Cosmos. Yeah. So those are from the choices that we made when we went in to create a new application. Pega is saying, in order for me to build an application, I need you to select which UI component you want. That's a layer that's on top of the base layer. So these rule sets over to the right will contain all of the rules that we're going to create for our case types and everything else we're going to create. They're going to go in these rule sets. Now, I'll give you a hint. I'll talk about it in detail on day 4, but 2 rule sets per layer. That's all I'll say about it for right now. 2 rule sets per layer. This is the organization layer. This is my divisional layer. And this is my implementation layer. That's how we represent it in Pega. Day 4 will dive really deep into this, but I want you to understand the overarching framework, the architecture of Pega. And when I open Constellation, what will I find? It better be built on Pega. So now we know the layers. I keep drilling down. At the end, I get Pega. It's sitting at that bottom layer. It's built on Constellation. It's sitting on top of it, which is built on the wealth application. Is built on it. And the wealth application has these rule sets to contain all of its rules. And that's what this picture is showing me. Pega, Constellation, Wealth Management. Where else can I get that information and see it? Let's go back to my Dev Studio. At the bottom, I can go to my profile. Bring up your profile, and you should see these same rule sets. You can see all of these same rule sets here. Constellation. And then you'll see these 6 unique rule sets for my application. All right, for $1,000 in Canadian money, American money, what is this rule set? Who put that in there? What is that for? Can anyone tell me? That did not exist anywhere. All right, I think someone had their mic open. So what is that rule set for?
I'm not. I remember that it was like the username that we signed in with initially into the instance.
It is. It is. So what is this rule set for? When you work as a team, finish your statement.
Oh, I was gonna say, so I guess it's like the user, like your rule set, like the user rule set.
Yeah, it is the user rule set. The purpose of the user rule set is when you're working as a team, then rules can be checked out by one or more people. So you want to check out a rule and fix it because someone said in the meeting it's your responsibility. When you check it out, then it goes into your personal rule set. Okay, so it goes into your personal rule set. You go in and you modify that rule. Now you can run the case type to test your rule out, and guess what? It only affects you because it's only in your rule set, and it's going to find your version of the rule before it's going to find the old version of the rule that all the other team sees. Does that make sense? That personal rule set is at the top of the rule set stack because right now it's empty and all of the rules are here. But if I check a rule out of one of these rule sets, it'll place it there. So based upon the location of the list of that rule set, it's going to find my version of the rule first and use it instead of the version of the rule that's already there. So you will have to do that. Part of the configuration, UFIC has already set up an administrator, and that particular person will have to go in and set up the other operators, turn on their check-in, check-out feature, so that when you guys are working together, you can work simultaneously on your project and make sure that you're not stepping on top of someone else's rule. Okay, so that's what that is for. All right. So moving right along, now we know where the application is. Let's look and see what exactly did it build for us. You know, what exactly did it do? Let's go to the application explorer. Now, I've not spent much time talking about the dev environment, but let's go to the application explorer. And then if I have time after this, then I'll come back and talk about all the other components. But for right now, if we look at the application explorer, and remember that's different than the app studio. Don't get them confused. There's a dev studio and there's an app studio, but this is the application explorer, which gives me a technical view through classes of what I've created. Okay. I like to do it this way. So if I come here, and my question would be, how many classes did it create? Classes in Pega are a container for rules. That's where rules, or I should put it this way. Classes in Pega are where rules are applied to. Okay, so think of it in object-oriented terms as a has-a relationship. So this particular application has and it's all of these rules. Okay. When I use the word container on the test, they will ask a question that says, you know, what is a container of rules? That is always a rule set. The term container indicates a rule set. The term class, we're going to always use the word applied to. It's the applied to class. So make sure you understand the terminology when you're having conversations with people. They're going to ask you, well, what's the container? Then they're meaning rule set. What's the applied to? They're talking about the class. Okay, so if I remove work, look at all the classes that it created for me. There's a data class, an integration class, link class, UA pages class, a work class, a history work class. All of those were created for you, and they all will be used at, they all have different purposes. This work class is for you to, it's the parent for any case types that you create. We'll always go there. This is the naming pattern that we have. This is the org, the division, the application, and then the type of class. So a data dash means anything associated with data. Integration points. Links UI pages doesn't so much apply to what we do on a development day-to-day basis. And then you have the work class, okay? Let's come back to the division layer. And again, you'll see in the division layer, you'll see data classes and integration classes, but you don't see work classes. Work classes are only at the implementation layer or framework layer. Let me say that again. Work classes are only at the implementation layer or framework layer. Now we're talking architecture. If I'm in App Studio, you never have to know any of this. But I know you guys are engineers, so you really want to know how this is being constructed. Okay. I go all the way back to the org, and at the organization layer, I have data, integration, and framework. So if I have to have a framework, it's already established for me. So for each layer that was created, Pega comes back and create classes in that layer with a certain naming convention so that we can place rules in those classes that are configured at a given level or layer so that scoping says that it can be reused if it's at a certain point. Okay? So I'm going to come back down to work. Notice that if I look at this class, that's all that's there. It's all that is created. But I can come to case type, and let's actually do it. Let's go to your environment. Let's come to case type, and let's stay in the Dev Explorer just so we can see some things here. I want to add a case type, and I want to do checking. Cap. You can put whatever you want to in there. And notice that if I do advanced setting, it talks about something like directed and parent. I'll talk about that later on, but just know that those two are important in Pega. Directed inheritance and pattern inheritance, that's important in Pega when you're looking at some advanced technical solutions. Here's my rule set that I want to put it in. I simply do a submit. I don't change anything there. All right, so I just created a case type. And when I create a case type, what else does it do for me? It creates a case life cycle, a CLC, with one stage, a create stage. Some of you had mentioned that you're familiar with object-oriented programming. Remember when I start my application or create my object, it's doing the instantiation, and in the instantiation process, it's initializing everything. That's what this is doing for me. So that's automatically generated for you. Okay. Well, let's take a look at some of the others that create some properties that have to be used. You'll see that any properties that start with PX, PY, PZ are owned by the system. So when we get to the properties section, I'll talk in details about that. Okay, since we did select Constellation, then you see here's my UX settings that I go through. Here are overall settings for my case type. I can be as detailed as even my locking strategy when I'm writing it to a database. What information and what locking strategy. And of course, we have some test cases here. Okay. But now here's the fun fact. Come back over to the App Explorer. Come back to your App Explorer. Come up to the top. Click on refresh. And notice that it created a class for you. So true or false, for every case type, there needs to be a class. True or false? True, absolutely. I can read your lips. Said true, yeah. So for every case type, there needs to be a class. But now let's open it up and notice what it did. Created a whole lot of other rules too. All we did was what? Create a case type. But now these are my categories. And if a category exists under a class, that means that there is at least one rule instance there. Because remember, we have 16 categories when I look at all of my records in the system. But these will only show if I've created an instance of a particular type. And you look here, it created a data page, 2 data pages. You look here, it created, oh my goodness, a case type. It created a flow rule. It created work parties. You see this, it created report definitions, 3 report definitions. You see here, it created 1, it created 3 harnesses. Wow. So now you see the power of Pega. You see that? You went and you did what? You simply came here and you said add case type. And from that one case type, its intelligence told it to create all of these rules to associate with it. So now, which one would you rather do? Would you rather do it from the design, Dev Studio, the design case type, or from App Studio where you're using the case types, or would you want to do the rules yourself? Make it easy on yourself. Do it from the case type Explorer. When you have to do particular rules, then find a way to do it. But you always want to try to do it from the out of the box perspective. All right, so I'm gonna come back to here. Because all I want to do is give you a foundation today so that you can see what's going on. Now, notice that when I look at the flow rule, it's called create form. Go back to your case type And you'll see that here's your rule with its one step. Okay, so there's one other thing I want to share with you, and then that will be it for today. So you'll get a good picture of the architecture of Pega. And so we probably dove a little bit deeper than we typically do, but I think you guys can handle it. When I come to a class and I right click, so come to that class and right click, and you'll see that there's a inheritance model that it follows. This is going to show you the layers again. These are the layers. When you're looking at this, base class, work dash, work cover, you look at all of this is in that bottom Pega layer. And we'll talk about directed and pattern later on, but just know they're in that bottom layer. Okay, that's in the Pega layer. And then you have done, which is in the organization layer. We call it the top layer, the more general layer. Then we have done PERS, it's in that division layer. Right? And then we have these three, that's in that implementation layer. Now, I know that because I've been working for Pega a very, very long time. I know the naming convention, but it explicitly tells me about the layer cake. Tells me exactly about the layer cake. So I have to make a decision when I'm creating Pega rules. Do I want them to go in a more general layer or a more specialized layer? More general for reuse, more specialized if I don't want to reuse them. So that's one consideration as you're working on your project, because every time you create something through App Studio, it can only go to the checking account. It can't go to any classes above or below. So you may want to think about that when you're talking about reuse. The other component I want to show you is built into Pega, which is fascinating to me, is we know that this is checking account. This is work dash checking account, right? Work dash checking account. So we know it's a case type. We create a case because we want to manage data. So how does Pega manage the data? This is out of the box functionality. It associates the class with a database table, and it automatically creates the database table. I call that Pega Magic. It automatically creates the database table, and you'll see that it has mapped this class to this database table. And why did it do that? Because in your data model, it needs to be able to store that information for that class and persist it as a table row. Now, whether you're a BA or an SA, you don't have to know that. Pega automatically does it for you. And you don't even have to build it into your application. Pega automatically does it for you. So anytime I run a case instance and I'm entering in data, then it's going to capture that data and at the appropriate time, write it into a table row so that it's not lost. Wow. Without writing a single line of code. That's low code development. Okay. And if I wanted to see all of my tables, I go to my database class mapping from my data model. I'll just pause for a moment. So if if I'm wanting to see it, I go to my database classes and properties for database class mapping. And it shows me for all of my work classes, I got these two. I've created a table and it has 91 columns in it for me to persist data in. And the final thing I'll tell you is that Pega persists all of your data into something called a blob, a binary large object. A blob, a binary large object. So it's very fast and it's very efficient. The downside is if you have to do some reporting, there are some other steps we'll have to do so that we can optimize that process. All right. So with that being said, I believe we've covered everything today that I want to cover, and a little bit more. The goal for the day was to make sure you understood the importance of Pega Express delivery, the 4 phases, DCO, its benefits, the 3 pillars, and how to navigate in the environment. So I didn't cover all the navigation in the Dev Studio. You know what? We actually have a few minutes to do that. So let's see if I can finish this. If so, we'll be further down the line. So here in the Dev Studio, we have the Dev Studio, App Studio, the prediction. So these are the 3 that we have for this environment. Now, on the application menu, I can do many things. You'll see that there are many configurations I can do with channels and interfaces, but that's easily done in the App Studio. I can do skins. I can do that in the App Studio. I can create a new application. I can switch to different applications. In configure, I got many things I can do. Look at my rule stack structure. Look at my inventory, my heat map of rules. I have guardrails. We'll talk about guardrails. If you're going to configure some of the rules, we have to say that they need to fit some performance criteria. And we give guardrails for that and score those. Things that you can check in, check out. Packaging, at the end of the day, I'm in the development environment. I need to move it to a staging environment. I can easily export it, or I can create a package so I can move it to some other place. The different tools, we covered those a little bit. Case management, not too much there, or for decisioning. Data model, you'll definitely use that. We'll look at the database tables, the class mapping, mobility, certificates, that's more SSA. We'll definitely talk about reporting and how to implement reporting, integrations, SOAP, REST, different types of integrations, the APIs, access and security. We'll cover that in lecture, and you'll do it a little bit in your project, setting up your application rules. And let's see here, we have general, nothing here, and nothing in user interface. So just like on the App Studio, I can launch my different portals, so I can see after I'm designing something what it looks like when I run it. I can create any of my rules from here, or new means I can create a new instance of that application that I'm running. Okay. I can search for any rule in the system by typing it in here. Work. So this will show me the rule type in which class it's associated with. I can look to see if anything is checked out or checked in, what rules are checked out, checked in. This again is resources, this is help, this is the branching that you see. Recents, this will show you the recent rule that's been updated for the application. Case types is just like the case type that we have for the App Explorer, for the App Studio. Data types are your data objects for your data model. Application Explorer gives you a view through classes. Records, these are all of the predefined rules and rule instances that are created in Pega. You can associate favorites if you want to. At the bottom, this is our security, our profile, our operator, our access groups that you then can get into. Here's Agile Workbench, bottom left-hand corner. On App Studio is the upper right-hand corner. But bottom left-hand corner, you can get to Agile Studio. You can look at any of your current work that you've done. You can do scenario testing in Pega. So that comes right out of Pega. You can do that. Any issues that you have. Remember, I talked about the guardrails. When you're running your application, it will tell you if you violated a guardrail. In other words, we set a hard value on any browser, any interaction. For that UI to come up, it should come up within 1 second. If not, it violated the guardrail. And so you wouldn't move anything into production until you got rid of all of these. The tracer, we talked about the tracer that's available in both of the studios. The clipboard is also available. It's used more so in the app or in the dev studio. I can look at a live UI. Since remember, Pega is built on Pega, so I can look at how it's built. I can see the UI structure of how something is created and how something is built. So that's a very powerful feature in itself. Any of the live data, we don't have any live data here. Accessibility, again, you have that. And then we do have some additional tools. If we're having performance problems, the application just not running fast enough, I can start a database trace. It might be because when it's writing to the database, it's not writing fast enough. I can tell it to profile my activities to see what problem that I'm having. I can tell it to capture how long it's taking for it to load the rules, to assemble the rules, how much IO that I have, and it's all built into Pega. So this is a very, very comprehensive environment that you get when you look at working with Pega. And that's it. So now I think I did cover everything. That gives us 6 minutes. And what I always like to do at the end of the day before you log off is for everyone to volunteer, tell me one thing, tell me your one takeaway for the day. And I'm not going to call on you, just unmute, let me know out of everything that we went through today, maybe the one thing that stood out that you know now that you didn't know before. Okay.
I can go first, I guess.
Okay.
I guess the one thing that stood out to me today was learning that I guess whenever you create like class types in Pega, it actually does a lot of that back end work for you, which seems to me it can be very helpful down the line and help save a lot of time.
Absolutely. All right, thank you, Mohammed. Next.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I can go. One thing I learned was about how the business architect and the system architect are integrated so that things can work and flow really well so that we're not duplicating stuff. And that when something's created in one place, you can see the same thing in the other, and it's easy to work together.
Yeah, it's all about collaboration. Thank you. Next.
Found it was interesting the case types and the case lifecycle, and the way you can visualize each individual stage and the events. I thought that was very interesting, very useful for development.
Yeah, very, very useful. You can see the work that has to be done, parcel it out, and take that complexity and be able to isolate it into smaller digestible chunks. Excellent, thank you. Next.
I was just surprised how comprehensive it is. Yeah, it's just with the amount of out-of-box features that could be used to make such complex systems much more simplified and scalable.
Yeah, that I think out of all of the features in Pega, once I truly understood it, it's just so comprehensive. I'm showing you one or two ways to do things. There are many ways to do everything. It's a very complete, very comprehensive, very robust, and it's built for complexity to solve complex solutions, not for small solutions. Okay, next.
Yeah. So in the previous versions of Pega, we had to, since I've worked with the Pega for quite some time now, I remember playing around with skin rules and binary files to incorporate the logos and themes of the application. But now you can do that, change that with a touch in the App Studio. So that stood out for me.
Yeah, very, very, very powerful and a big time saver. Okay, next.
I found it really cool how you can do like the same thing in Dev Studio and App Studio, and sometimes it was like simpler to do it from one way than the other. And the situational layer cake, how applications are built on applications, that was also really interesting.
Yeah, that's a real core structure, and once you understand that, whether you're a BA or an SA, it just gives you a better picture when you're implementing something, what the reuse capabilities are. To be honest with you. Okay. Very good, thank you. Next.
Yeah. So I found it interesting how like low code Pega is. So like when you create like a new application or like a new case type, it like does a lot of the work for you. So I really like how it's like it makes it really easy for like the coder, and it does all the backend work for you.
Yeah, it's true, and you don't have to write a piece of code. So that's all cool. I'll show you later on what code it actually writes. It's thousands of lines of Java code for every rule instance that it creates. So it's very interesting. Okay, next. I think that's 7 people. I still have 4 more people.
I guess I'll go. I
Okay.
like how it involves anybody that's that can be a part of like a development team, or people with no point knowledge of like system architects. I think that's pretty cool that everyone can use the same software and follow along.
Yeah, because I think that's always been the typical contention between business and technical, is that they always were seem to be at opposite ends and they butt heads a lot. And Pega says, I'm a collaboration tool. I want to take that intelligence that business analysts and architects have, give them a simple tool to design what they see and what they know, but use that to then build all the technical underpinning so that technical people can go and extend it and implement it further. I just think it's brilliant. So yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you. Okay, next, I think 3 more people here.
And For direct capture objectives, I learned about the 3 pillars essentially. So personas, data, and I believe micro journeys.
Okay. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that's important because depending on your software, depending on your approach, you just have to know what's important, what's central, what's core, what's absolutely needed, and those 3 are always there in Pega. Okay. Next, I think there's 1 or 2 more.
I would say what surprised me was sort of the ease and the comprehensive documentation you can make. That's sort of just out of
Yeah,
the box. I know
it's
traditionally
crazy.
it can be a bit difficult and maybe tedious to write comprehensive documentation, but here
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's sort of like just done for you as long as you give it all its necessary inputs.
Yeah, yeah. And so hopefully you guys will be able to see at the end of your project, create that document or create it along the way in iterations. I think you'll be surprised at how professional it looks and how in depth that you end up with. Okay. And I think we have 1 more person. If I had my count correct.
I thought it was pretty interesting. It kind of reminds me of Scratch. I don't know if anyone's heard of that one, but it's this like programming tool that people use for teaching programming, where it's like puzzle pieces, and it's almost like this,
Okay.
but for like this is like business oriented, and Scratch
Right.
is for like teaching code.
Got you. Okay. That sounds good. Well, with that being said, I would like to say thank you all for being attentive today. This was day 1, so you can cross that out. Day 2, be prepared in the morning for Ufuk to come on from Switzerland, and he has a lot of work for you guys to do in the morning. I think you're adequately prepared at this point. We'll take 30 minutes at the beginning of the day to make sure that I do the right transfer over to him. I'll have some conversations with him before class. And then you guys will be off and running on your project. We'll take lunch, and then I'll come back and we'll learn a whole lot more about the system. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Thank you.